Hey guys, tonight we're wandering through a fog so thick it could smother a campfire. And no, that's not just your screen's brightness settings. Imagine velvet dampness pressing against your skin, air heavy with the musk of rotting leaves, and something older. You know those mornings when your alarm clock feels like a personal betrayal. Multiply that by a haunted church bell. Go ahead, hit pause to adjust your blankets. Just don't get too cozy. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment telling me where you're listening from and whether your local weather's as aggressively misty as this. I'm currently recording from a closet in Portland, 3 a.m., because my cat learned how to yowl along with fire trucks. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your eyelids flutter open to gray. Not the cozy gray of rainy Sundays. This gray has teeth. A bell tolls somewhere distant, each note stretching like taffy in the cold. You count 6 rings, but dawn won't break for hours. Makes sense. Medieval monks actually used these vigils to mark nighttime prayers, though I doubt their bells left this metallic aftertaste. Your tongue sticks to the roof of your mouth, cottony and sour. Fog pools around your ankles as you sit up grass slick with droplets that aren't quite rain. There's a myth that English villages buried their bells during plagues, whispered they'd stolen breath from the dying. Historians still argue whether that's why some churches keep crypts directly under belfries. You press a palm to the ground, earth pulses like a slow heartbeat. Could be a groundwater spring or your imagination getting creative. Wind snakes through the trees, bare branches click like knitting needles, your hoodie's doing nothing against the chill. 17 steps ahead, a stone wall looms. Moss bleeds across its surface, green on gray on older gray. You trace a carving, maybe a saint, maybe just weathering. 9th century masons often hid pagan symbols in church masonry, sun wheels disguised as halos, fertility icons masquerading as belt buckles. The stone's warmth surprises you, then vanishes. Trick of the skin, another bell closer now, vibrates your molars. Your breath fogs the air, lingers, twists into shapes that almost resemble letters. Ever notice how mist makes everything feel half-dreamed? Experts think that's why so many ghost stories bloom in river valleys. A twig snaps left, you spin, but there's only the blurred outline of a birch grove. Your pulse thrums in sync with the bells. Coincidence? Let's pretend it isn't. The path crunches underfoot, gravel giving way to moss-stitched cobblestones. You pass a well, its bucket swaying despite the still air. They used to drop silver coins in these for protection. Not saints or prayers, straight up bribery for the water spirits. Your pocket yields a dime. It hits the water with a plink too loud for this hour. Swear the fog flinches. 3 more bells deeper, slower. Your scarf itches. You're pretty sure that's wool and 30% regret. Something glints in the mist, a weather vane. Getting closer reveals a rusted iron rooster, missing one wing. Local legend claims it crowed nonstop during a 17th century witch trial until the blacksmith muted it with a hammer. Now it just creaks, a skeletal metronome keeping time with your steps. Damp seeps through your jeans. Should have worn layers, but when do we ever? A shadow detaches from the church wall, too tall for a person, too fluid for stone. It melts into the fog before you blink. Your lungs ache. Turns out breathing suspense is a terrible cardio workout. You reach arched wooden doors, carved with grapes and serpents. The iron ring handle chills your palm. Push, it doesn't budge. Pull. A groan splits the silence, like the building itself is protesting your presence. Inside smells of beeswax and mildew. Pews march toward an altar draped in moth-chewed velvet. Candles flicker, not lit, just burning. How's that for a warm welcome? Footsteps echo above the belfry. The sound loops left, right, left like someone pacing an oval. You tilt your head, count 12 steps before the pattern repeats. Perfect circle. No human walks like that unless they're trying to summon something or avoid creaky floorboards. A cough escapes you. The noise bounces off stone, multiplying. Now it sounds like a chorus of choking. Classy, you retreat toward the doors, which slam shut with a thud that shakes dust from the rafters. Guess the parish prefers captive audiences. A hymn rises, no visible singers, but the Latin phrases prickle your neck hairs. Dies eerie, dies Allah, day of wrath, day of mourning. Cheery stuff. The candles flare light catches on a fresco above. A saint's eyes follow you across the nave. Probably a perspective trick, but your shoulders don't care about optics. Sliding into a pew feels like surrender. The woods polished smooth by generations of fidgety worshippers. Your fingers find a crude heart carved near the edge initials inside. T+M, 1643. Historians still argue whether it's romance or vandalism. The cold nibbles your ears. Should have worn that beanie your mom keeps mailing you. The bell strikes again, this time a single blow that shakes your ribcage. You're out the side door before the echo fades. Mud sucks at your shoes. Something splashes in the reeds, could be a duck, could be the village's collective anxiety manifesting. A cottage window glows ahead. Smoke curls from the chimney, but the roof's slick with dew. Fire shouldn't burn this clean in damp air. You're 10 paces from the door when a shadow blocks the light. A face appears wrinkled as a crumpled map, and the baker nods. He holds a loaf scored with crosses. For the hungers, he rasps. The bread's warm. You don't remember reaching for it. First bite tastes like rye and ashes. Your throat tightens not from the bread, but the sudden understanding that dawn won't come. The fog's brighter now. The mist coils around your ankles like a living thing, thick enough to chew, but tasteless as boiled linen. Stone walls bleed through the haze. Gray blocks rough-hewn when nights still clanked through Europe. Your boot finds a cobblestone worn smooth as a river rock. 17th century taxpayers probably cursed these uneven pavers daily. Historians still argue whether medieval streets angled upward to keep sewage flowing, or just mirrored drunk architects' blueprints. A spire stabs the clouds ahead, its weather vane caked in gull droppings, but still spinning lazy circles, indecisive as a compass in hell. You count 12 gargoyles before the fog swallows them whole, each demon's grin eroded into something almost kind. Experts think limestone dissolves at a thumb's width per century, meaning these joke-carved guardians will outlive every iPhone and possibly humanity. Your palm skims moss blooming between stones, cold velvet under fingertips. 1792's renovation left one original wall intact. Can't tell which, the Parish, wears its scars like wrinkles. A local legend claims the belfry hides a brick from Hadrian's Wall stolen by a love-struck mason hauling it 40 miles uphill. True, who cares? It's the kind of lie that makes villages immortal. The fog thins just enough to betray movement overhead, a rook's nest collapsing in slow motion. Twigs and wool scraps rain down, plus one button stamped with a fleur-de-lis. You pocket it, free souvenir. Your soul's echo now, that wet slap monks once muffled with straw-stuffed shoes. Someone in the 1400s scraped a crude hopscotch grid here, faded chalk resurrected by the damp. You hop squares anyway. Stone 1, stone 2, pivot on the lichen slick. 7. Mildew and beeswax hit your nose. Candle stubs left for a saint whose name everyone mispronounces. 3 worn steps lead to an oak door banded with iron. But your gaze snags on the keyhole. It winks back, a fleck of brass too bright for this sepia world. Through it, flickers, maybe candles, maybe eyes. The debate over medieval lock mechanisms bores you, until you're the one locked out. You turn crumbling shed to your left, prop a hand on its wall. A tile clatters into nettles, revealing a sparrow's nest filled with ribbon scraps. One bears embroidery for a leaner light of the fens. Record keepers insist plague wiped out this parish twice. Yet here's proof someone kept stitching through the dark. The noon bells should have rung by now, if noon exists here. Your stomach gurgles. Medieval peasants ate bread so moldy it hallucinated them. No wonder they saw visions in these stones. A shadow flits across the churchyard, too tall for a bird, too silent for a cat. You pretend not to notice. Some ghosts just want an audience. The path forks, left toward a well crusted in copper coins, right to a lich gate sagging under ivy. You choose straight ahead, crushing chamomile that releases steam with every step. 17 different wildflowers identified in 1891. 18, if you count the drunk botanist's moon daisy that was just dandelion fluff. Wind riffles your collar, carrying a chord that's not quite music. Maybe the bell's sleeping, or the spire humming. Your neck prickles. Centuries of pilgrims probably stared at this same mossy roof. their boot prints dissolved into yours, your breath fogging air they once exhaled. The stones drink your heat greedily. This parish always hungers, always remembers. The 12th toll vibrates your molars, a bronze throat clearing that shakes dew from your sleeves. Your eyes climb the tower, crumbling steps spiral upward. A shadow shifts behind arrow-slit windows. That's your bell ringer, sleeves frayed, shoulders hunched, hauling the rope like he's been at it since the Black Death. Medieval ringers got paid in ale. Records claim 3 pints per funeral, 5 for a royal wedding. This guy's payment, probably curses. His rhythm's flawless, 12 strikes when your wristwatch insists it's barely 6. Historians still argue whether towers stretched skyward to glorify God or to drown out tavern brawls. You sidestep a puddle reflecting the belfry. Ripples warp the shadow into something winged, 3-eyed, gone with a blink. The real man's no monster, just another wage slave. His cough rattles down like pebbles in a tin can. 14th century laborers mixed goat hair into mortar. The towers probably held together by ancient sneezes. The rope jerks, hemp fibers groaning under calloused palms. You count each tug, 1, 5, 9, 12 again. Townsfolk once believed extra tolls scared off plague clouds, though villagers in Suffolk blamed bells for attracting cholera. Who's right? The dead aren't talking. Fog slithers up the tower. Now the bell ringer's a smudge, a charcoal sketch flickering in and out. Legends whisper of a nun bricked alive here for ringing the devil's hours. Her name, Agnes, Etta, depends which drunk historian you ask. Your neck cricks from staring blink, and the belfry's empty. No, there, pressed against the far wall, a stain darker than the rest. Small towns love their ghostly staffing solutions. 17 pigeons erupt from the spire, feathers drifting like misplaced ash. One drops a half-eaten berry that stains your boot crimson. Experts think church birds spread the great pestilence, but maybe they just hated how we sang. The final toll lingers, your ribs hum like tuning forks. You're 2 streets away when the clanging starts anew. 12 strikes, 24 now. Arc math for holy men, red flags for you. A shutter bangs open overhead, housewife shaking a rug. Lint snows down, smelling of lavender and lard. Comes every Thursday, she snorts. Doesn't even wipe his boots. You nod, easy to mock till your town's mascot quits. Your boot grinds something into the cobbles, a musket ball, a petrified olive, neither, just a nail bent at a right angle perfect for prying up secrets or coffin lids. Tuck it beside the fleur-de-lis button. Souvenirs multiply in misty places. The shadow reappears, this time in an alehouse window. Same stoop, same relentless tugging motion. Reflection or resurrection. The tavern door creaks. A toothless regular waves you in, hair of the dog. He's pouring before you answer, 80-proof hospitality. You decline alcohol and time loops mix poorly. The bell ringer fades from the glass, or maybe you stopped looking. Towns end, ghost shifts don't. Somewhere, a thatcher repairs a roof that'll leak by dawn. Damp leather whimpers as you jog toward the watermill. The tolls chase you like a itch between the shoulder blades. 12 becomes 24, becomes a number that doesn't exist yet. The parish folds your panic into its quilt, stitches another weird thread into the pattern, hums along. The mill's rumble fades behind cedar doors, their iron handles shaped like serpents swallowing their tails. Candlelight licks frescoed saints, their gaze tracking you like bored cats. That one's Bartholomew, flayed skin draped over his arm like a waiter's towel. Medieval artists used lead-based pigments. Centuries of worshippers got high on flaking halo dust. A draft stirs the flames, shadows twist into galloping horsemen, then slump back into saints. Your boot scuffs the floor, carved rabbits dance along the tiles. Tomb makers hid them as inside jokes, a screw you to bishops who underpaid. 7 rabbits, 8, 9, counting the one missing ears. Fringe theorists insist they're a map to Templar gold. You're just here for the vibe check. A hymn rises, no choir loft, no lips moving. The melody's familiar, something grandma hummed while canning beets. 13th century cloisters banned women from singing. So the real question is, who's grandma's duet partner? Your breath fogs a plaque, names eaten by verdigris. Memento mori survives, along with a crude doodle of a horse wearing a hat. You lean against a pillar, cold seeps through your jacket. The hymn's Latin now, maybe. Could be Pig Latin for all you know. Agnus Dei echoes from a side chapel where a single candle gutters above a font. Water ripples, no draft caused that. Kneeling pads indent, but no knees press them. The scent hits beeswax and wet wool like a shepherd's closet. Historians still argue whether medieval churches allowed dogs during Mass. If yes, Fido's ghost just shed on your jeans. A Bible lies open psalms, or maybe a shopping list. Vellum's scraped too thin to tell. Your finger traces a capital T. It warps into a tiny face. Woodworm art, or did some monk doodle his buddy during Vespers? The hymn stutters, a needle scratch in the divine mixtape. Shadows bulk up. Something warm breathes on your wrist. You whirl nothing, but dust motes pirouetting in stained glass light. Chartres, builders hid pagan faces in their labyrinths. But this feels less ancient tradition, more get out. You pocket a shattered prayer bead, shards still smelling of rosewood. The candles whisper as you pass. Or maybe that's your jacket brushing a shroud. Incense burners dangle like dead chandeliers. One sways without cause. Galileo tested pendulum theory in cathedrals. This feels more Newton's third ghost. Stone scrapes stone, an ambry door creeps open. Inside, hollow-eyed statues stacked like firewood. Their pupils follow you. Statistically impossible. Optically unavoidable. Someone left an apple core on St. Lucy's tray, modernity's votive offering. The hymn dissolves into a child's giggle sharp, sudden snuffed. Your nape hairs vote unanimously to evacuate. Quit while you're only mildly haunted. The exit's right there, oak worn smooth by guilty hands. You glance back, all candles extinguished. Darkness pools where saints once glared. But the font still ripples, circles expanding, reaching. A wet footprint glistens on the tiles, then another, heading toward you. The door slams, your spine pressed against carved apostles. No wind, no hand pushed it. 13-year-old, you would have peed a little. 30-year-old, you upgraded to silent screaming. Outside, fog smothers the moon, leaving only the parish's heartbeat, distant, relentless, yours. The door latch clicks behind you, its iron teeth biting into place. Fog clings like wet gauze, but your nose twitches toward yeast and charred applewood. A pinpoint of orange bleeds through the gloom. No. 5 pinpoints. 6. Windows lit by flickering tallow dips. The scent pulls stronger now. Dough blistered black. At the edges, warmth that hovers just above skin temperature. Medieval bakers faced fines for underweight loaves. The assize of bread and ale kept their ovens honest. You wonder who audits phantoms. Cobblestones slope downward, a gravity-fed path to the bakery. Its door hangs ajar, revealing flour-dusted floorboards and a hearth the size of a coffin. The baker's back is to you, kneading a mound of dough that sighs under his fists. His apron's stained with something between raspberry jam and old blood. Sit, he grunts, not turning. A bench materializes by the fire, rough-hewn pine, polished smooth by generations of tired thighs. You count 7 loaves cooling on a rack, each crust carved with spirals deeper than decoration. One resembles an Ouroboros, another a triquetra, missing its third arc. Historians still argue whether Celtic bakers encoded messages in bread scores or just liked pretty shapes. The kneading stops. He slams the dough onto a peel, the sound punchier than thunder. Flour snows through firelight as he shoves the loaf into the oven. Sourdough, he says, finally facing you. His eyes are loaf pan rectangular, all corners. Starter's been fed since Cromwell's troops drank THE Chinese letter, INGRED, IENT list. You nod like you know what that means. Embers pop, scattering crimson fireflies across the floor. The baker wipes his hands on a rag that might have been white during the Magna Carta. He slices a heel off a rye boule. It weeps steam. Eat. The crust crackles between your teeth, caraway and ash. 9th century monks believed rye bread cured melancholy. You feel immediately worse. Something clangs in the oven. The baker jabs a poker into the coals. Flames surge blue-green. Copper salts in the glaze, he mutters. Keeps the loaves honest. Your tongue tingles. Alchemists once spiked bread with metal powders for vitality. Most clients died shitting silver. You take another bite. He scores a fresh loaf, blade moving faster than prayer. The symbols, a rabbit, no, a hare, chased by crescent moons. For dreamless sleep, he says, pressing a thumbprint into its flank. You recall Saxon bread charms buried under thresholds, warding off night visitors. The hearth's heat wilts your eyelashes. A shadow detaches from the ceiling, plump, doughy, hovers above the flour sacks. The baker hurls a rolling pin without looking. It passes through the spectre splinters against the wall. Ignore her, he growls. Can't taste salt anymore. Tries to haunt the pretzels. Wind howls down the chimney. The fire flattens into a glowing carpet. The baker grabs a broom, sweeps ashes into a trough. Full moon rising, he says, though the windows show only smoke-gray void. Best leave before the watch toll. Historians still argue whether medieval night bakers worked by candle law or just insomnia. You rise, brushing crumbs from your lap. He shoves a linen-wrapped loaf into your hands, still furnace hot. Mind the crows, he warns, nodding toward the door. The parcel throbs, or maybe that's your pulse. 13 seeds burst from the stitching, clatter to the floor like thrown dice. Outside, fog so thick it slicks your skin. The bakery's light winks out, but the bread glows through its wrap, veined with bioluminescent cracks. You tear a chunk, pause, lob it into the mist. Something with too many teeth catches it mid-fall. The gnashing fades westward, toward the mill's drowned wheel. Your fingertips find a new engraving in the loaf, a spiral with no exit. Funny, the baker's blade never touched this side. The flour on your hands itches, turns iridescent under non-existent moonlight. 400 years from now, they'll find your fingerprints in a Chinese letter P, a G, E, and call it heresy. The path ahead sinks into black, but the bread's glow paints a trail. Behind you, a single candle reignites in the bakery. Its flame licks the window, spells a word in Old Norse, unravels. The parish folds deeper into itself, a lung drawing breath before the plunge. You follow the crumbs. The bread's glow dissolves at water's edge, crumbs sinking like drowned stars. A creek emerges, black as ink, its banks choked with willows bowing toward their jagged reflections. Their branches rake the surface, skimming half-formed faces that scatter into ripples. Romans boiled willow bark for headaches, but this water reeks of rot and river mint. You kneel, watch a water strider skate across your warped twin. 3 stones break the current, flat as griddle cakes. You hopscotch them, boots slipping on algae-slick surfaces. The 3rd stone shifts. Underneath, a femur gnawed thin by crayfish. Historians still argue whether medieval mills disposed of rivals here, or if the creek just hungers. A frog croaks, either punchline or eulogy. Swamp gas burps up bubbles the size of goose eggs. They burst with a sound like wet lips smacking. Your laugh echoes weirdly, tangled in willow limbs. The air tastes of moss and indecision. 17th century herbalists prescribed breathing marsh fumes for galloping hysteria. You inhale deep, feel your pupils dilate. Black wings slap the water, a swan arcs overhead, feathers hissing against the fog. It lands upstream, neck coiled like a noose mid-drop. Tudor nobles once ate swan pie at banquets, but this one eyes you like dessert. Nice beak, you mutter. It doesn't applaud. The opposite shore shimmers, close enough to spit at miles away in spirit. Something glints in the shallows. You wade in boots filling with icy silt, your fingers close around a child's tin bucket, rusted through. A frog plops in. Make a wish, you tell it. The bucket sinks. Mud squelches between your toes, an unwelcome pedicure. You scramble onto a half-sunk log. Its bark tattooed, with initials and crudely carved hex signs. Someone's drawn a schooner in the rotted wood, sails billowing toward a storm that'll never come. 19th century sailors believed willows caused shipwrecks if felled under a waning moon. This one drowned itself. The swan drifts closer, leaving a V-shaped scar on the water. Its reflection shows no wings, just a naked torso, trailing ribboned entrails. You blink. Reflection resets. A fish breaks the surface, gills flared, gasping at air thicker than tar. Your bread loaf pulses in its wrap, bioluminescent cracks, now spelling runes even Google Translate wouldn't touch. You lob a chunk toward the swan. It snaps the morsel midair, neck convulsing. Elizabethan bakers used to mold bread into swans for royal feasts. They never mentioned the aftertaste of betrayal. Water slaps the bank, erasing footprints you swear weren't yours. Reeds rustle, though the air's as still as a confessional. You spot a clutch of eggs nestled in the mud pale blue, veined with red. Too large for ducks, too still for anything living. 5 centuries back, villagers whispered of creek wraiths laying trap eggs to steal children's breath. You back away slowly, in case evolution got creative. Shadows thicken, the swan glides past, trailing a wake of silvered bubbles that pop into miniature fog clouds. One brushes your cheek, leaving a film like cobweb residue. You scrub it off, fingers coming away glittering. 18th century Parisians coated their wigs in mica powder for that freshly haunted sheen. You're a trendsetter. A bell clangs underwater, dull, distorted. The swan freezes, then dives, vanishing with a flip of webbed feet. 10 seconds pass. 20. The creek goes preternaturally quiet. Even the willows stop their scritch-scratch against the surface. Tudor London had submerged drowning bells to mark plague pits. But here, the swan erupts skyward, a fish clamped in its beak. The creature flails, rainbow scales flashing. Something underneath. The water grabs the fish's tail. A hand, a branch, a hand-shaped branch. Tug of war lasts 3 gasps. The fish tears in half. Both victors retreat, swan gulping its prize, creek swallowing the rest. Your loaf dims, fungal light guttering. Mist creeps over the water, bringing the sour tang of century-old tea leaves. You pocket a willow twig, its buds tight-fisted. Queen Victoria's mourners carried willow wreaths, mostly to hide their yawns. The twig thrums faintly, vibrating like a plucked guitar string. Across the creek, a lantern flares to life, smudged yellow through the fog. The swan hisses, paddles backward, melts into grayness. You count 73 breaths before the lantern winks out. Your feet find the path again, mud now crusting into makeshift sandals. The water whispers as you leave, a wet chuckle. You glance back. Reflections in the creek now show willows upside right. And you inverted, grinning like a fox in a henhouse. The loaf's final crumb falls from your pocket, sinks without ceremony. Cathedral architects buried foundation sacrifices in riverbanks. But this creek prefers snack offerings. Your boot squashes a mushroom. It emits a sigh and a spurt of green spores. You make a mental note to Google hallucinogenic British fungi later. Assuming later exists here. The parish bell tolls, or maybe it's just your premolars buzzing. Either way, you quicken your pace. The mill's silhouette looms through the mist, a hulking shadow missing its edges. Moss clings to spinning paddles, each scoop of the water wheel hauling up liquid the color of weak tea. You count 9 creaks per revolution, a rusty metronome counting minutes that stopped mattering ages ago. Medieval records show watermills grinding 300 pounds of grain daily. But this wheel churns nothing but silt and regret. Your palm meets a timber beam, damp rot grinding against your lifeline. The vibration starts in your molars, rattles down to your hip bones, settles somewhere behind your navel. Cold spray mists your face as the wheel dips, smelling of frog spawn and tarnished pennies. A faded sign swings nearby, its carved letters eaten by woodworm. You squint. Nigh how. The last character's a scribble. 19th century millers sometimes etched protective charms into their wheels, or just doodled when bored. This one's either a yin-yang symbol or a botched smiley face. The mill pond swirls with foam, clumps clinging to your boots like ectoplasmic lint. You stoop, skim a finger through the scum. Something below mimics the motion, pale fingers mirroring yours before dissolving. 18th century parents warned kids about millmaids pulling children into spillways. You yank your hand back, too fast, thwacking your elbow on the wheel's trough. Pain radiates, sharp and honest, anchoring you to the now that's rapidly unraveling. Inside the millhouse, gears hang frozen, their iron teeth cowering under rust sweaters. Sunlight bleeds through cracked roof tiles, spotlighting a mouse carcass mummified in cobwebs. Historians still argue whether millers poisoned rivals by blending ergot-riddled rye into their flour. You sniff the air, no bread smell, just the tang of oxidized metal and failure. A ledger lies open on a workbench, its pages warped into topographic maps of mildew. October 12th, 1588. Paid 2 shillings for eel skins to grease the axles. November 3rd. Dreamt the wheel spoke Dutch. Told vicar. He charged 6pence for the exorcism. You flip further. 1944 entries detail grinding acorns for wartime flour. The final page. A child's drawing of the mill flames licking its roof, dated 3 days from now. Outside, The wheel groans louder, faster. Its paddles flicker between wood and bone, between soaked planks and yellowed ribs. You press your ear to the sloshing trough. Voices churn in the water, arguing in Middle English about barley taxes. One gurgles, "Tell the bailiff his mother sucks hobnails," before getting cut off by a splash. A frog launches itself onto a paddle, riding the wheel's ascent like a tiny, damp king. At the apex, it leaps, clearing 17 feet into the pond. 10 out of 10, you murmur, clapping slow. The frog sinks, bubbles rising in a perfect theta shape. You're pretty sure that's not a real Greek letter or a compliment. The vibration in the timbers changes, a stuttering hum like a dial-up modem dying of boredom. You step back. The wheel halts, mid-scoop water cascading around its stillness. 1616 millwright manuals advise chanting Psalm 23 to restart stuck wheels. You opt for kicking the trough. It works, sort of, the wheel lurching forward, then spinning backward, then forward again. Time hiccups. Your watch runs counterclockwise for 3 glorious seconds. Mist curls through the millhouse, door fingers beckoning. Inside, the mouse carcass twitches. Cobwebs flutter, though your lungs feel vacuum sealed. That's new. A grindstone rolls toward you, not propelled by gravity, but by the determined squeaks of 8 spectral rats. You sidestep. The stone plows through the wall, leaving a hole shaped like Plymouth Rock's angrier cousin. Sunset bleeds through, a sudden smear of tangerine across gray. The pond glows, its surface crusting over with algae light. You peel a strip of moss from the wheel. It writhes like tapeworm segments before crumbling. 17th century surgeons prescribed mill moss tea for melancholic vapors. You pocket a fragment anyway. Vacation souvenirs are getting weirder every year. Shadows stretch wrong, bending around the mill like taffy. You follow one. It leads to a hatch half buried in mud, the locks missing, replaced by a braid of human hair gone the color of chimney soot. Inside, jugs line collapsing shelves, their labels reading lamb's breath and fox sermons. A 1928 tabloid claimed a Sussex Miller brewed fog. Here, sold it in bottles to paranoid poets. You unscrew a lid. The smell unlocks a memory of pneumonia-grade naps. The wheel's groan pitches higher, a metallic whine fraying your optic nerves. You climb onto the mechanism, boots slipping on slime-green planks. At the top, the village spreads below, mist drowning cottages up to their chimneys. Your thigh brushes a paddle. The wood pulses, a heartbeat sinking with the parish bell's distant throb. Gothic architects hid speaking tubes in mill wheels to spook apprentices. Or so your barista's conspiracy podcast claims. Moss crumbles under your grip, each clump dissolving into tadpoles midair. They plink into the pond, darting away like spilled commas. You check your palm. The rots left a stain resembling the Berlin U-Bahn map. Directions to the underworld, you mutter. A fish leaps, snapping at a phantom fly, its scales glinting like forgotten code. darkness congeals. The wheel slows again, each rotation, now hauling up strands of black ooze from the pond. It reeks of licorice and locker rooms. Victorian millers paved driveways with this gunk, till their horses started sleepwalking into rivers. You hop down, the impact driving damp up your spine. Your shadow stays behind, perched on the wheel, waving as you retreat. Moonlight stitches the path ahead, each silver thread dissolving underfoot. The mill's final creak follows you, a sound that's less goodbye and more see you sooner than you'd like. You pat your pocket. The moss fragment hums against your thigh. 15 paces out, the wheel resumes its grind, now chanting your name in the language of splinters and stagnation. Your boot finds a puddle. It reflects the millhouse windows, each lit pane showing a different century's turmoil. A face presses against 1348's glass, plague sores blooming like wet confetti. You blink. Just cobwebs. Probably. The parish bell tolls, or maybe it's your fillings playing indie folk covers. Either way, you match your stride to the wheel's creak, two relics marching out of sync with time. The laughter hits you mid-stride, a burst of giggles sharp as shattered glass. You freeze. Cobblestones glisten where mist retreats, revealing stick figures drawn in rainbow chalk. Their hands clasp faceless giants 20 times their height, crude crowns perched on blobby heads. Victorian urchins mined colored clay from these hills, their rainbows smeared across factory floors and plague walls alike. You kneel, fingertips hovering over a lime green giant. The pigments still damp. Silence slams down, so total it rings. Your ears pop. 3 hopscotch squares glow ahead, numbers climbing to 99 in wobbly digits. A 4th square sits smudged, as if someone scuffed it out mid-jump. Fishermen's wives once drew chalk labyrinths to trap pneumonia spirits. But this pattern feels less like protection, more like a target. Wind gusts, sending a felt bonnet tumbling down the alley. It snags on a rain barrel painted with weeping daisies. You give chase, rounding the corner just as a cellar door slams. The hat floats, suspended 6 inches above the ground, then drops. Subtle, you mutter, pocketing the bonnet. Its ribbon smells of lye soap and spoiled milk. The chalk trail resumes, figures now holding weapons. Or maybe flowers. 18th century graffiti artists faced the stocks for defacing parish property with unsavory portraits. These stick warriors wield what might be rakes, or scythes, or rib bones. Their giants have grown teeth. You step over a puddle, its surface freezes mid-ripple, trapping a tadpole in crystal. A ball bounces from nowhere, red rubber streaked with coal dust. It rolls to your feet, whispering as it spins. Ina, Lena, Tret, Middle English counting rhymes, or a clever kid mimicking the BBC's Chaucer audiobook. You kick it gently. The ball dissolves mid-arc, scattering into 9 sparrows that curse in Flemish as they flee. Brickwork rattles. A slate tile slides loose, exposing a hidey hole stuffed with cowboy marbles and a moldering teddy bear. Its button eyes track you, seams splitting into smile lines. Edwardian toymakers, padded bears with cemetery moss to invite guardians. You nudge the bear with your boot. It sighs, releasing a decade's worth of attic dust and existential regret. Shadows thicken above. You glance up, a dozen paper airplanes circling like vultures. Their noses glow, waxed parchment scorched with childish sigils. One dives, you duck. It bursts into ash, spelling "Hello, stranger" in floating cinders. Tutor schoolmasters burned homework to punish daydreamers. But this feels less disciplinary, more like arson with flair. The alley dead ends at a mural stick figures, building a bonfire of books. Giants toss in dolls, rocking horses, a brass horn leaking mist. 19th century reformists petitioned to ban fairy tales, claiming they softened young minds for demonic habitation. The mural's flames twist into a spiral, pulling your gaze toward a hidden doorway. You press your palm to the wood, its warm breathing. Carved initials swarm under your touch, names wriggling like maggots in tallow. M. Lovesp, 1812, becomes P. Devors M. 1813. As you watch, archaeologists found similar palimpsests in Pompeii's brothels. Histories, oldest Erase Your Ex campaign. The door creaks open, revealing a stairwell choked with doll heads. Each step squeaks a different nursery rhyme. Rockabye baby gnaws at your molars. Ring around the rosy vibrates your spleen. By the fifth stair, your kneecaps hum pop, goes the weasel. Musicologists traced the decline of church attendance to the rise of catchier sewage worker chanties. But that's a thesis for another haunted dissertation. At the bottom, a birchbark boat floats in a flooded cellar. Its cargo, thimbles, teeth, a miniature gallows with a moth noose. The water reflects the ceiling, where more chalk figures march, their giants chained and weeping. Historians still argue whether medieval children's games rehearsed peasant revolts or just really liked drawing swords. You dip a finger, the water tastes of iron and weak lemonade. A music box tinkles, its tune warped by rust. You lift the lid, a porcelain ballerina pirouettes her face, melting into doughy nothingness. The mechanism grinds, slower, slower, stopping on a half note that lingers like a pending sneeze. Pre-war toys often hid ration cards in their bases. This one coughs up a photo negative of your own face. Age 6, building sandcastles where the parish now stands. Something clatters above the doll head, stairs avalanching. You pocket the photo, wade toward a crack of light. The water thickens, waist deep, neck deep, then ankle deep as you breach a dry attic. Dust motes swirl, forming a stick figure, family waving from their chalk house. A giant looms behind them, its outlines smudged by what might be tears or rain or the sweep of a janitor's mop. The window won't budge, painted shut with something that bleeds when scraped through warped glass. The parish green stretches empty. Your breath fogs the pane, obscuring the view, except for 3 words etched in the condensation. We were here. Another breath, they rewrite themselves. We are here. And another, here we are. Floorboards groan. You spin, expecting giggling phantoms, just your shadow stretched thin and flickering. It points to a corner where moonlight pools, illuminating a hopscotch grid scratched into the floor. The final square holds a single word inked in coal. Jump. You hesitate, then leap, soles slapping stone as the attic, the stairs, the entire alley snaps away like a curtain. You land in the present, mostly. The chalk figures still dance at your feet, but their giants have halos now, or maybe nooses. The ball bounces again, this time silent. Your pocket vibrates. The moss from the mill pulses against your thigh, keeping time, with a heartbeat too large to be human. Down the lane, lamplight spills from the widow Voss's cottage. Her chimney exhales smoke rings shaped like funeral wreaths. You follow, stepping over cracks where the pavement throbs. Another hopscotch grid tugs at your periphery, its numbers counting backward from infinity. Iron screams as you shoulder the lychgate, rusted hinges protesting like widows at a wake. Lichen crawls up its oak beams, spelling names in braille only moths can read. Medieval pallbearers once sheltered here during storms, their dead cooling under rain-lashed roofs. Now the structure sags, a mouth frozen mid-snarl. You step through, gravel crunching like brittle vertebrae underfoot. The churchyard breathes. Tombstones tilt at drunken angles, their inscriptions erased by jealous moss. One slab lies cracked, a marble hand jutting upward, fingers petrified mid-wave. 17th century parishes buried suicides face down with millstones to grind their souls into useful piety. This palm seems to reach for something beyond repentance. Mist pools around your ankles, cold enough to frost bootlaces. A weathered obelisk catches your eye, its base gnawed by what might be teeth. You crouch, brush away ivy, uncover a chiseled rabbit riding a wolf. Folklorists whisper of stonemasons planting pagan jokes in Christian yards, their laughter echoing centuries after the Inquisition's flames died. The rabbit grins its paws, clutching a cluster of stone grapes. 3 headstones form a triangle, names facing inward, as if gossiping. Ezekiah Snood, B. 1692 D. 1692, sits between Mother Aggie, she knew too much, and a blank slab, sweating iron-rich tears. You press your ear to the void, catch the faint skirl of a tin whistle. 19th century grave robbers documented choirs of mice in crypts, though their gin intake merits skepticism. Something glints in the grass, a coffin nail crusted with verdigris. Victorians hammered these into door frames to peg restless spirits, though you're pretty sure that's how you get tetanus ghosts. The nail warms in your palm, pulsing like a misplaced heartbeat. When you drop it, the earth swallows the metal with a wet slurp. A yew tree looms, its branches heavy with black berries. and what might be leather satchels. Getting closer reveals shoes, dozens dangling by their laces. Tudor apprentices hung boots here to ensure promotions, a practice discontinued after the Great Cobbler's Revolt of 1583. These soles look newer, pristine treads, neon pink laces glowing like radioactive caterpillars. The wind shifts. Rot blooms in your sinuses, sweet and meaty. A butcher's shop at high noon. Behind the yew, a sunken grave vomits its contents. Shattered pine planks, porcelain dolls with their eyes needle-pointed shut. A silver comb tangled in roots thicker than your thigh. Historians still argue whether lich gates were built to protect the living from the dead, or vice versa. The comb trembles its teeth, chattering a Morse code, SOS. Moonlight slicks the path ahead. You follow, stepping over a toppled angel, clutching its own wing. Lichen paints its cheeks green, a leafy beard, swallowing its sermon. Nature's graffiti, you mutter. But the joke wilts as the church looms into view. Its spire pierces the low clouds, bricks shifting like scales on a sleeping dragon. Footprints appear in the dew, bare feet, too small for adults, too precise for animals. They lead to a crypt door ajar just enough to whisper. Cold radiates from the gap, frosting your fingertips as you push. Inside, someone's arranged tea candles into a spiral, their smoke coiling into a shape that might be a hand or a spider. A ledger rests on a plinth, names in faded ink, dates crossing from 1417 to next Thursday. You flip to a random page. Marlow hedges, devoured by shadows, June 14th, 2024. Your finger hovers under tomorrow's date. The ink wriggles, reshaping itself into Marlow hedges, shadow diplomat, June 14th, 2024. A drop of wax hisses onto the parchment, sealing the amendment. Shuffling echoes above, slow, deliberate, a wet sound like bread dough being slapped. You pocket the ledger, bad idea, and retreat as the candles snuff themselves in sequence. Outside, the churchyard hums. Tombstones now face you, their blank fronts scowling. Even the rabbit monument has turned its stone wolf, baring teeth at the hollow where you stood. The lich gate groans as you exit, scattering rooks from its rafters. One perches on your shoulder, its claws' gentle beak glinting with something gold. It drops the offering into your palm, a molar capped with a tiny crown. Dental bodyguards, you murmur, recalling Renaissance queens who gilded molars to ward off tooth witches. The bird cackles, its laughter fading as it dissolves into a scrap of fog. Rain begins, needle-thin drops that sting more than soothe. You shelter under a hawthorn, its branches braided into a crude arch. Petals stick to your cheeks, each one whispering a different year. 1666, 1812, 2024. The tree thrums its roots, churning the soil like a sleeper turning in bed. When the storm passes, the graves have shifted, forming a perfect spiral around where you stand. A child's rhyme drifts from nowhere. Ring the lich, ring it true. What's buried here will follow you. Your shadow stretches northeast, wrong direction for this hour, its edges frayed like burnt paper. Lichen creeps onto your boots, spelling words in that moth language again. You shake it off, only to find new symbols blooming on your palms. The church doors creak open, but that's a hymn for another midnight. The widow's candle gutters as you approach, its flame licking at moth wings trapped in the tallow. Her cottage crouches under a used skeletal branches, roots breaching the floorboards like arthritic fingers. Come warm your bones, she rasps, stirring a cauldron of mulled wine with an iron key. Tudor wills often left keys to lovers instead of rings, a habit that bankrupted half the locksmiths in Devon. Smoke stings your eyes, cedar and singed honey, as you crouch by the hearth. She ladles wine into a chipped teacup, the liquid shimmering unnaturally. They planted us face to face, she says, nodding at the yew outside. Our roots knit quicker than our vows. Medieval couples sometimes requested burial under churchyard trees, convinced the wood would fuse their coffins. You sip cinnamon cloves and a late note of grave soil. Her bony finger points to the rafters. Dried herbs dangle like hanged men, rosemary for remembrance, wolfsbane for lies. Something furry that winks at you, 17 winters back. She croaks, the yew cracked open like a wishbone. Her dead husband's pocket watch tumbles from her shawl, still ticking. Found this in the roots, keeping better time than his heart ever did. A log shifts, spitting sparks into a shape that might be a clasped hand. She ignores it. They called us mad, planting letters in each other's ribcages. Archaeologists found a 13th century skeleton with a love note still wedged between its teeth, ink preserved by calcium deposits. The widow's laugh rattles, a cough, a wheeze. Something skitters up the chimney. You notice her wedding band, tarnished silver fused with a strip of lead. Coffin nails. She smirks, flexing fingers mottled like old maps. First anniversary gift. Victorian resurrectionists reportedly forged rings from grave iron, believing it warded off corpse thieves. Hers leaves a green smear on the teacup, a patina that moves when you blink. Wind howls through the keyhole, snuffing half the candles. She relights them with a click of her tongue. He visits during storms, tracks mud through my dreams. Her firelight reveals too many shadows. One leans against the mantel, hat brim dripping. 17th century widows could legally marry ghosts in Wales, provided they supplied a lock of the deceased's hair and 3 eyewitnesses from beyond the veil. She offers a biscuit, its center oozing blackberry jam, thick as clotting blood. You decline. The dough shrieks in the flames. Suit yourself, she shrugs, nibbling a corner. The dead pay handsomely for a taste of living sugar. A cottage industry of afterlife cookies once flourished in Cornwall, until health inspectors raided a bakery stocked with coffin nails and grave dust. Her tale spins darker, lovers who tunneled between graves, planting oak saplings in each other's chest cavities. The trees still grow north of the creek. She whispers, their branches heavy, with heart-shaped knots. Historians still argue whether yews were planted in churchyards to poison cattle or guide the dead through tangled afterlives. The widow's yarn unravels. A clock chimes 13. Her fire begins burning blue. You rise to leave, boots crunching eggshells strewn by the threshold. For purity, she explains. Though the shards squirm like beetle wings, she presses a cold scone into your palm, raisins squinting up like tiny eyes. Mind the roots, she warns, as the door slams itself behind you. Moonlight paints the path home, but the yew's shadow now stretches across 3 counties. Something moves beneath the soil, a slow, seismic shift of entombed fingers reaching, knitting night into a bridal veil. Your pockets sag with unseen weight. The scone, now whispering nursery, rhymes in a voice too much like your own. The mist clings now, a second skin soaked in creek water and chimney smoke. Your boots sink into grass that sighs like trampled lungs. 17th century Londoners believed thick fog carried plague miasmas. So they burned rosemary and horse dung in public squares. Doesn't smell like rosemary here. Fences dissolve first, rough-hewn posts reduced to gray smudges. Sheep follow, their fading bleats turning guttural wrong. You count 18 woolly shapes before they vanish. Or maybe the fog ate your math. A smithy's hammer clangs somewhere, each strike closer than the last. Yet the anvil's ring never arrives. Your scone squirms in its napkin, rasping a nursery rhyme about a well that drowned the moon. Toss it into the haze. The fog retches it back, raisin eyes now glowing yolk yellow. Fine, you mutter, pocketing the cursed pastry, but no more verses about widows' cellars. Stone walls bleed through the gloom, the parish church resurrecting itself brick by brick. Frost crawls up the spire, geometric patterns too precise for nature. Medieval masons allegedly encoded mathematical puzzles in cathedral frost patterns, a theory dismissed by scholars, then proven by a drunk clockmaker in 1893. The frost here spells your name. Breath fogs the air, lingers, becomes a shapeshifter. First a sparrow, then a hanged man, then something with too many knees. You walk through it, dampness settling in your collarbones. 12 bells toll no 13, but the belfry's lost in wool-thick gray. A cowl presses into your palm, damp wool stinking of lanolin and low tide. For the coughing rasps a voice that isn't there. You pull the hood up anyway. Its rim hangs low, nibbling your peripheral vision. Edwardian fishermen wore fog capes woven with horsehair, convinced the bristles could pierce murk like cat whiskers. Yours feels alive, threads squirming against your scalp. The ferryman's dock appears, planks warped into spinal curves. No boat, just rope knots that drip black sludge. 19th century salvage crews swore fog transformed ordinary rope into eel colonies, a claim repeated in taverns, ignored in textbooks. You kneel, touch a pulsing knot. It memorizes your fingerprints. Something groans in the water, a basso profundo vibration felt in molars, not ears. Historians still argue whether the Great London Fog of 1952 really killed 12,000, or if thousands simply stepped sideways. The sludge ropes tense, anchor chains, intestines. As the groaning swells, your hood tugs northward, an insistent nibble at your crown. Former textile union rules required weavers to knit fog nets during pea soupers, capturing particulate ghosts for resale. The wool drags you toward the graveyard, where the yews shadow stretches like taffy. A child's laughter erupts sharp as shattered goblets, then shatters into croup coughs. Marco, it wheezes. You freeze. Polo hisses the fog itself, right against your carotid. 18th century schoolyards banned fog games after 7 children vanished to play in error. Sentence exceeded 18 words. Adjusting. 18th century schools banned fog games mid-match. 7 children vanished mid-shriek. You back into a tree, bark shifts, becomes wool cloak, becomes stone. The laughter moves west, chasing its own echo. Your hood yanks hard enough to crick vertebrae. Message for the sleeper. It purrs voice like a creaking schooner. Stumbling forward, you trip on a root-mangled tombstone. Here lies the parish's breath, engraving blurred by lichen or finger bones pushing through. Sudden clarity, a bubble of clean air smelling of camphor and panic. A picnic table materializes, toast racks fossilized into the wood, jam hardened to ruby glass. Don't, croaks a woman materializing beside you, her face a blur of tulle and moth wings. They see through the gaps. She's gone, so is the clarity. The fog rams itself down your throat, cold, sweet, tasting of the widow's wine. Your pockets vibrate, the scone harmonizing with the sludge rope's drone. A rhyme about a key, a door, a bell that swallows its own tongue. Grave mounds rise underfoot, each step a blasphemy on curved tops. Your hood unveils the yew, now grown through an oak, now just smoke. 16 sheep circle you, eyes void black, horns curling into infinity symbols. One bleats the word tethered, another unspooled. The ferryman's groan becomes a chord D minor, the devil's interval. Musicologists claim fog dampens certain frequencies, but this note liquefies your spine. You fall, hands plunging into soil that parts like river water. Roots caress your wrists, slippery, inquisitive, parental. Above, the fog churns into a snow globe of parish ghosts. A milkmaid chases spectral cows. A blacksmith hammers fog iron. Children leap from the spire into nothingness. You try to inhale. The mist floods your windpipe, coats your alveoli, stitches itself to your ribs. The scones whisper crescendos, a lullaby promising bone-deep rest. Soil climbs your elbows, shoulders, neck. It's softer than expected, warmer, already shaped to your body's curves. 14 bells toll, or maybe your own pulse. You close your eyes, let the fog stitch your lips shut. just as something yanks your ankle. The hood, always the hood, hauling you backward through mud and marrow. Not your turn, it gurgles, reeking of tide pool rot. You surface beside the widow's creek, lungs vomiting fog-thick clumps that sprout tiny thorned flowers. Dawn leaks through, a sickly yellow stain on the horizon. The mist retreats, dragging fences, sheep, 2/3 of the chapel with it. Your hood disintegrates, threads dying with mouse-like squeals. The scones silent, raisins shut-eyed, jam crusted black. Somewhere a door slams. An unseen baker curses. The parish rebuilds itself, stone by stone, lie by lie, as you lie there, half sunk in the creek bank, becoming part of the mud's slow, patient scripture. Mud cakes your fingernails, thick as the grout between parish stones. You rise, creek water sluicing off your thighs, tasting of tarnished spoons and chapel incense. That loom sound again, wooden clacks threading through dripping willows. 19th century textile mills hired knocker-uppers to rouse workers at dawn, using pea shooters and bamboo poles. This rhythm's gentler, a hypnotic click-clack that tugs your damp sleeves. The cottage appears through vine-choked lattices, windows bubbling with ancient glass. Ivy strangles the chimney, but smoke coils upward anyway, gray twisting into indigo. Your palm meets the doorframe, wood grain hums beneath lichen. Tudor builders often mixed horsehair into plaster, believing it trapped jealous spirits. The walls here feel breathy. Inside, a single tallow candle gutters. Shadows leap across warped looms, their shuttles darting like silverfish. You count 39 spools, each glowing faintly, threaded with what looks like condensed moonlight. A weaver hunches at the largest frame, her hands a blur of calluses and charcoal-stained linen. She doesn't glance up, doesn't need to. Sit, she says, voice rasping like flax being stripped. The stool obeys before you do, scraping forward of its own accord. Historians still argue whether the Bayeux tapestry was embroidered by monks, noblewomen, or a single defiant nun with a grudge. This weaver's work defies categories, half tapestry, half shadow play, all unsettling. She thrusts a spindle into your hands, its whorl carved with spirals that squirm under thumbs. Twist counterclockwise, she orders, or you'll unravel the frost patterns. 7th century Byzantine silk smugglers hid maps in spindle grooves until Emperor Justinian burned their fingers off. You comply, wool whispering through your grip, colder than creek water. The loom's beam creaks, a sound felt in molars. Fabric grows, depicting the parish spire at dawn, except the stones translucent, revealing glowing viscera within. Loom waits, she mutters, nodding to clay discs dangling below. Medieval weavers reused Roman-era weights, little faces peering through centuries of grime. These bear your features, down to the mud still crusting your earlobe. A thread snaps, sends a shudder through the tapestry. The woven sky darkens, stitched crows take flight, wings bleeding black dye onto your wrists. The weaver tuts, plucks a hair from your temple. She threads it into the warp, your scalp tingles, memories surfacing like pond bubbles. 4th grade report card. Dentist's waiting room. That strange man who smiled too wide at a foggy bus stop focus. She hisses, jabbing a bobbin toward your chest. The spindle writhes, spins itself into a miniature cyclone. Pre-industrial looms required 3 people to operate, but here shadows act as second and third. Yours stretches thin, binding itself to the treadles, pedaling in grim silence. The tapestry shifts, now showing your boots squelching through today's creek bank, but the threads vibrate as if alive. A minor chord seeps from the wool, harmonizing with your pulse. 17th century Flemish weavers allegedly wove funeral dirges into burial shrouds. Myth. Until a 1990s X-ray revealed harp-string threads in a duke's gravecloth. Your spindle hand blisters. Frost patterns from the chapel crawl up your arm, etching equations between freckles. The weaver chuckles, a dry sound like birch bark tearing. Nearly there, she says, though the tapestry shows no end in sight. Just your lonely figure trudging through loops of half fog. Sudden warmth, you're holding not wool, but the cursed scone from hours prior. Its raisin eyes blink wearily. Jam cracks, splitting into toothless mouths. The weaver snatches it, embeds it into the fabric. Good mortar, she nods, as the pastry's limbs fuse with thread. Light fractures, the cottage walls become a kaleidoscope of tangled years. You glimpse the widow scattering yew berries, the ferryman coiling sludge ropes, hooded children skipping through the belfry. A shuttle flashes, instant of clarity. The parish isn't rebuilt each dawn, but reknitted. The weaver yanks a lever. The loom falls silent. She examines your blistered palms, sighs, wraps them in cloth that smells of lanolin and lightning strikes. Tell the baker his mother misses the saffron buns. She murmurs, pushing you toward the door, and avoid the dairyman's shadow after Compline bells. Outside, ivy retracts, reveals moonlit initials. AT 1582. You lean closer. The T resolves into a stick figure hanged man. Every Tudor village had a designated weaver for shrouds, always named Anne, always hanged if plague deaths dipped below quota. This Anne winks from the wood grain, then dissolves into termite trails. Your bandaged hands hum. The fabric seems to lick the wounds. As you turn, the cottage shrinks, collapsing into a child's embroidery hoop, abandoned in the mud, threads fraying, needle rusting, pattern forgotten, but not gone. Somewhere 13 bells toll. The parish spits you back into its cobblestone gullet, half woven, half digested, wholly unsure which threads you're still trailing. The flock seeps from the mist like curdled milk, first as blurs, then solid, too solid. Their hooves sink soundless into rain-slick grass. You count 46, 47, 48 legs, multiplying faster than math allows. 19th century shepherds grazed flocks, of precisely 200. Any fewer risked village bankruptcy. Any more summoned tax collectors. These sheep defy ledgers, their numbers swelling as you blink. Wool hangs in clumps, dripping fog juice, reeking of lanolin and something bowel deep. No bells swing from their necks, just raw leather collars bitten by teeth not their own. A ewe lifts its head, obsidian eyes reflecting your face, back warped. Chin elongated, nostrils flared into pits. Medieval peasants buried sheep skulls under hearthstones to ward off lightning. But you're pretty sure that's not why your scalp prickles. They chew. The sound's all wrong, wet, shredding, sinewy, like a butcher working a dull blade. Grass blades vanish into black gums, no tongues visible, just the grind of molars on chlorophyll. You step back, heels squelching into a cow pad, from no cow in sight. 3 lambs pivot, stare, jaws working sideways like old women gumming toffee. Nice sheep, you croon, voice cracking on the plural. 1 ram ambles closer, curled horns oozing amber resin, his left ears tagged with a lead seal Roman numerals weathered to illegibility. Tudor tax agents nailed tin tags to flocks during wool audits, though none survive intact. This one winks a greenish glint in its alloy. You touch the ram's flank fleece parts like stage curtains. Reveals ribs stacked 2 neatly piano keys of bone beneath. The sheep doesn't react, keeps dismantling a dandelion with surgical precision. A wet crunch, you jerk your hand back, fingers glittering with phosphorus-rich wool fat. 18th century mill workers rubbed raw fleeces on arthritis until their skin peeled off in greasy strips. Wind shifts. Moonlight carves the field into monochrome. The flock forms a rough spiral, heads bowed, hocks trembling. No bleats, no flies, just that ceaseless mastication. Historians still argue whether Saxon shepherds removed bells to evade Viking raiders, or because the sound attracted things that climb church walls at twilight. Your boot finds a dry patch, crusty lichen snapping like saltines. 50 pairs of eyes lock onto the noise. Jaws pause mid-churn, then accelerate, faster, frenzied. A ewe drops to her knees, grazes her own shadow, teeth scraping cobblestones that weren't there before. The baker's warning echoes avoid the dairyman's shadow, but this feels adjacent. The ram rams your thigh, not hard, a nudge toward the spiral's center. Wool coils around your ankles, not wool, something sinewy and warm. You stumble forward, circle tightening like a noose knit by arthritic hands. That joke about counting sheep to sleep curdles in your throat. Fog spills from their nostrils, threads the air into a gauze-choked maze. Your pockets empty, no scone remnants, no weaver's thread, just a pebble shaped like a molar. 14th century Scottish crofters carried sheep stones to prevent flocks from wandering into fairy rings. But this pebble's sweating. Or you are. The spiral collapses, sheep pressing flank to flank. A living woolsack, their breath froths white, congeals into a film on your sleeves. You smell the parish's bones now chalk, flint, the iron tang of 100 shroud-stitched corpses. A lamb sneezes. The sound bursts a cyst in reality, splattering the grass with viscous chronology, teeth close on your cuff, gentle, persistent, dragging you toward the half-seen steeple. The ram follows, leaking resin that hardens into a trail of hazy opals. You've read about these Flemish ghost pastures where phantom flocks graze, recorded in margins of burned grimoires. Your ankles ache, wool fibers burrowing under skin, knitting themselves to capillaries. Dawn shivers, thin light catches the flock's pupils. For a heartbeat, you see them, countless women hunched over spindles, hands webbed with blue thread. But the sheep blink, and the vision unravels. The ram exhales, a sound like a bomber jacket zipper, or the weaver's shuttle mid-flight. First bell tolls, or maybe your eardrum twitching. The flock dissolves, hooves evaporating, leaving dew circles perfect as crypt molds. Only the ram remains, chewing a final clump of clover. His jaws unhinge, wider, dislocating into a grin too reminiscent of the ferryman's rotting sloop. You run, wet socks slapping pavement that materializes grudgingly. Behind the field size, contracts, resumes its role as background scenery. A tuft of phosphorus wool clings to your wrist, pulses once, goes dormant. Somewhere beyond the fog, historians are frantically redacting maps. You hope they're quicker than the teeth. The nave swallows sound whole your gasps, your footsteps, even the rustle of that cursed wool in your fist. Dust motes hang frozen, each a speckled world trapped in amber light from windows too high to clean. You taste the dirge before hearing it, sour wine and moldering parchment coating your tongue. Voices coil up from flagstones, through pews, around your ankles like ivy, not Latin, something older, all guttural stops and hissing sibilants that wriggle behind your molars. Carolingian choirs perfected 4-part harmonies for mass. But this chant fractures into 13 distinct tones. Your fillings hum, shadows between pews ripple, not left to right, but depthwise, like tar pits bubbling. A hymn book slams shut its thwomp echoing thrice, once in each of your ribs. You glimpse a cassock's hem vanishing around a pillar, except when you follow, it's always the next pillar down. Hello. The word curdles midair, plops to the floor as a viscous glob. From the choir loft, a child's laugh, or maybe a raven mimicking one. Crusaders brought back talking starlings as novelties, trained to recite psalms, until their tongues were split with silver needles. You press a hand to the baptismal font, water so cold it sears. The dirge swells, now smelling of myrrh and gangrene. The altar cloth writhes, its embroidered lambs chewing their own wool into frayed knots. You count 7 candlesticks, then 8, but the 8th's a femur yellowed by time. Historians still argue whether 14th century priests used human bone wax to seal confessional oaths, or if that's just Reformation propaganda. A kneeler creaks under invisible weight. Split, wood weeping amber tears. You catch a phrase in the cacophony, Krullvasten, a low German term for the moment. A ghost realizes it's dead. Your left ear pops, releases a trickle of warm liquid that smells suspiciously of communion wine. Light shifts, stained glass saints twist their necks, follow you with faces pressed against the leaden seams. Saint Agatha holds her severed breasts like offering plates, eyes rolled back in devotion or agony. Medieval nuns drank powdered stained glass to absorb holy light, their urine reportedly glowing during Vespers. You retreat toward the confessional, its curtain twitches, an invitation. Inside, moth-eaten velvet grinds against your cheek. The speaking grate frosts over, a breath from the other side forms words. Ticklewort, 3 hedges east. Dig at the crow's third caw. The voices outside reach a crescendo, decayed sopranos harmonizing with your tinnitus. Tudor churches outlawed devil's intervals in sacred music. But these tritones vibrate your sternum like a plucked bass string. Your back teeth ache. Something's whispering through the enamel. The confessional door slams, not trapping you in, but sealing something out. Claws scritch the wood, slow, deliberate, etching what might be old Norse runes, or just a very angry squirrel. A hymn sheet slips under the door, the notes replaced by maggot trails. You pocket it, because when have bad decisions ever stopped you? The clawing stops, replaced by wet snuffling. Then a sound like 1,000 rosary beads hitting marble. Flee or wait. Your bladder votes, but democracy's overrated. Light bleeds from the high windows, not fading, thinning, strained through some celestial sieve. The voices recede, draining into floor cracks with a sound like bathwater circling a drain. A final phrase lingers, Morgen ist, ach ein Tag. Though the last word stretches, snaps, becomes tag, as in the game. You emerge at church empty, candles extinguished. The altar cloth lies flat. Lambs, now normal sheep, grazing on cross-stitched hills. Only evidence. A single choir robe poolside, sodden stinking of bog water. That, and the hymn sheet in your pocket, now itching like a scab. Dust motes resume their dance, innocent as ever. You glance back at the loft, spot a shadow darker than the rest, humming something suspiciously melodic. A shiver walks your spine left to right, like a penitent taking communion. Outside, the fog exhales, wraps the parish in its usual wet wool shroud. Somewhere a raven practices psalmodic Latin. Somewhere closer, your sanity packs a small suitcase. Either way, onward. The dairyman's cheese won't eat itself, though it might eat you. Dust motes pirouette in the barred sunbeam. Your shadow breaks their waltz. The scriptorium door groans, its iron hinges flecked with blue-green rot. Tudor-era locksmiths favored alarm systems of woven garlic and candle wax. None here, just 3 rusted brackets holding centuries at bay. You jiggle the hairpin gifted by that cheese-hoarding dairyman until the mechanism sighs. The smell hits first vinegar and lye, undertones of something fungal and sly. Vellum pages molder on tilted desks, ink flaked off like dead skin. Monks once soaked parchment in stale urine to soften it, a practice your nose now bitterly regrets. Your fingertip brushes a page, still warm. Letters retreat under your touch, fleeing into the margins as living shadows. Iron gall ink dominated medieval script. Tannic, acid-eating words from within. Hungry ghosts devouring their own stories. Historians still argue whether these disappearing texts were pious censorship or just cheap materials failing spectacularly. A codex lies open, illuminated serpents coiled around empty speech bubbles. Their jeweled scales shimmer, then dim, outmaneuvered by drifting dust. You lean closer, the serpent's eye blinks. A joke, a trick of the light. Your throbbing temple votes trick. Footsteps scuffle above, too light for human, too rhythmic for rat. Pigeons, maybe. Though the abbey's original dovecote was torched during the 1381 Peasants' Revolt. A key fact from that eco-tour you half slept through. You trace a half-erased word, Elfsagotha, Old English for elf-sucker. Though context is lacking, the vellum pulses, whispers rise, not voices, but numbers. Dates: 1215, 1348, 1666. Pestilence years. Coincidence. The pull tab from your soda can says try again later. Something glints in the dark, a quill nib embedded in the floorboards. You pry it loose. Black goo oozes. The quill's ooze creeps toward your sleeve. You shake it loose. With a jerk, black droplets hiss on stone. Distant clanging guides you, a heartbeat rhythm felt in molars, not ears. Blood follows the sound, or is dragged. Heat slaps your face first, a forge's breath hotter than July asphalt. Crimson light licks soot-stained walls. Shadows dance like drunken puppets. The smith's hammer falls, clang. A horseshoe glows orange on the anvil, curving too sharply for any hoof you've seen. Medieval blacksmiths often brewed quenching barrels with stale ale and urine. But this trough bubbles green smells like burnt rosemary and regret. He nods without looking up, leather aprons scored with old burns. Muscle memory drives his arms. Strike, twist, strike. Metal singing lessons it never asked for. You note his left thumb gone, stump shiny as polished cherry wood. Lost it to a spooked mare's kick. He'll say, maybe. If he ever speaks, the shoe dips into the trough. Steam erupts in a dragon's gasp. Iron sighs, hardens, turns the color of storm clouds. Historians still argue whether village smiths openly practiced old pagan rites or just had flair for drama. That green smoke pooling around his boots isn't helping the case. A child's horseshoe hangs above the door, rusted bent, draped with braided garlic. Found it buried under the chapel altar. He grunts. First words since Cain farmed. Folk once nailed shoes over thresholds to trip wandering spirits, though garlic suggests he's hedging bets. Your palm hovers near the anvil, radiant heat warms lifelines, maps futures in sweat. He slams a new rod into coals, sparks swarm like fireflies on red-eye. There for the marsh steeds, he mutters, as if explaining tides to a stone. Your mind flashes to the drowned path, those reeds swaying without wind. A bellows wheezes its lungs thinner than the widow's last rasp. You count 11 pumps, 12, 13. The smith's hammer hesitates, a stutter in the gospel of forge song. His shadow stretches, splits, reforms, but the flames don't flicker. He thrusts the cooled shoe at you metal colder than December creek water. Hang it where moonsleep finds you. The command hangs with the steam dissolves into the reek of scorched wool. You pocket the iron curve. It thrums against your thigh, a second heartbeat off rhythm. The smith returns to his work. Hammer blows faster now, urgent. A shrill whine builds in the glowing metal, almost vocal, almost begging. You back toward the door, lintel carved with overlapping rings, protection sigils, or cellulose decay. Who can tell anymore? Outside, frost nips air that smelled like fire seconds ago. The shoe in your pocket pulses, slow, insistent, a metronome for this madness. Some claim Cromwell's cavalry shoed their horses here before Naseby. But that's the trouble with small towns. Every rock's a witness. Every nail's a relic. Night herons cry above the smithy's chimney, wings lit crimson by surviving embers. You walk. The shoe grows heavier, or your legs weaker. The debate's academic now. Far off, the parish bell tolls once, a sound that curls around iron and bone and squeezes. Your boot sinks into marsh, a trail half swallowed by reeds. Each step sucks, gurgles, threatens to keep your shoe as tribute. Frog song trills from the shallows, a shrill chorus cut mid-note. Silence slaps harder than the smith's hammer. Water seeps through your laces, cold as the horseshoe in your pocket. The path ahead wrinkles ribbons of peat and algae, pretending solid ground. Roman engineers once laid oak planks over bogs like this. Their roads still haunt England's wetlands. If you know where to stomp, you're guessing this isn't one of them. Reeds whisper groan, 1,000 bent backs airing grievances. Your reflection stares up, rippling, puppyless, mouth open in a scream it can't quit. Folk tailies claim marsh frogs carry messages from the drowned, their throats swelling with last words. Tonight, they're keeping secrets. The iron curve in your pocket hums, a low C-sharp that vibrates your molars. You kneel, wipe brackish sludge from a half-sunken marker. Carvings swirl, spirals within spirals, a language for things that wriggle. Historians still argue whether such stones guided travelers or lured invaders into wetland graves. Something glints beneath the surface, a coin, a lost button. You reach, fingers breaking the skin of the water, and the marsh exhales. Bubbles rise, carrying the scent of rotten lilies and gunpowder. Your toes brush metal cold, angular and gone. 17th century muskets rust beautifully in peat, their barrels clogged with centuries of silence. A joke forms about British soil's taste for firearms, dies when the reeds part ahead. A single swan glides past, ivory against liquid shadow. Its neck arcs, a question mark made flesh. You count 7 signets trailing behind, no, 8. The last one flickers. They're then not, like film skipping frames. Mud oozes over your boot rim, a lover's possessive grip. You wrench free with a sound like Satan's bathtub drain. Cottage wives once washed hair in this muck for marsh magic sheen, though results varied and smelled like death's outhouse. The horseshoe jerks in your pocket, tugging northwest. Twilight bleeds the color of oversteeped tea clouds clotting above. You spot the ferryman's rotting dock ahead, planks warped into arthritic fingers. That's new, or very, very old. 3 splashes echo to your left, symmetrical, deliberate. Training grenades from Napoleon's era sometimes surface in these fens. Their fuses damp, but tempers intact. Your root bound, waiting, but the water stills. Just the swan preening now. If swans preen with necks coiled like nooses, your heel hits stone, a sunken slab carved with lichen beards. Moon-pale tendrils brush your ankle, retreat, tickle thinking. Peat preserves everything, bog butter, sacrificed kings. That one embarrassing thing you said at a harvest fest. The path dips, water now lapping at your knees. Cold bites through wool, turns marrow into slush. Thatches of frogspawn cling to your shins, translucent pearls full of black commas. Each holds a tiny ancestor screaming in amphibian Esperanto. Footprints appear ahead, bare human, glowing faintly blue. They sink deeper than your boots, as if the walker carried an anvil. Medieval punishment for poachers. Sleepwalking smiths, you follow, because curiosity outweighs self-preservation here, and the iron won't let you turn back. The trail ends at a willow roots knotted into a cradle holding something. Moss blankets its contents, green fuzz pulsing like a weak heartbeat. The horseshoe burns cold against your thigh, a warning or invitation. Take your pick. Dawn's first gray fingers comb the marsh, turning mist into veiled lace. Somewhere behind you, a plop, a giggle water swallowing both. The parish has rules written in silt, enforced by things with too many teeth. You wade toward the willow, each step lighter than the last, as if the marsh stopped clinging. 1863, 87, 90, numbers unraveling, the roots part. A cradle of rusted swords, jellied eggs, and a pewter flask stamped with a forgotten king's crest. Twin eels break the surface, their bodies braided, writhing, a living caduceus. They sink as you reach, leaving the flask floating, lid crusted shut. Your thumbnail prize fails, the air prickles with impending church bells. First toll shudders, the water ripples, moving against the wind. The flask cracks open, disgorging a sludge that smells of communion wine and gun oil. Whatever clings to your fingers pulses once goes still. The swan hisses, a sound like steam escaping old radiators, and the marsh exhales you. You're back on firmer soil, boots caked with evidence, horseshoe silent. Faint laughter trickles from the reeds, or maybe it's just the wind learning new tricks. You stumble into the churchyard, your boots shedding clods of marsh flesh onto weathered stones. The sundial looms, its bronze gnomon bent like an arthritic finger. Moss creeps across Roman numerals, XVII, devoured by green ivy clinging to decayed marble. Dawn should stretch shadows here, but the dial's face stays stubbornly blank. School textbooks claim medieval sundials helped monks mark prayer hours, but this one's tilted 11 degrees west. Accident. Sabotage. A local legend insists the blacksmith hammered it crooked during a lover's quarrel to steal extra daylight for his trysts. You press a palm to the stone, cold seeps up your arm, tastes of tarnished pennies. A spider dangles from the gnomon, its silk catching light that shouldn't exist. Your shadow finally appears 2 feet to the left, stretching toward a moss-choked grave. Historians still argue whether these shifts were early daylight saving schemes or stonemasons trolling future grad students. Twilight moths flutter around the dial, their wings brushing XII and III in quick succession. Time here doesn't march, it staggers, loops, coughs up hairballs of minutes. You blink, suddenly kneeling, grass stains blooming on your jeans. The spider now perches on your shoulder, weaving a web between your earlobe and collar. 3 cherub statues peer from the church wall, their faces eroded into genderless blanks. One holds a chisel, another a mallet. The third's hands cup something missing. Restoration crews in 1901 reported tools vanishing, returning weeks later, twisted into corkscrews. You tap the mallet cherub. Its stone feels suspiciously warm. Your phone buzzes, a pocket earthquake against your thigh. The lock screen flashes 9:47 a.m., then 3:12, then year not found. You chuck the tech into a nettle patch. It deserved this. Sundial purists claim staring at phone clocks here can trigger temporal indigestion, mostly quoted from drunk tour guides. The gnomon's shadow finally moves, scuttling sideways across numerals like a wounded crab. It pauses at VII, digs in trembles. Church bells toll once, a sound thicker than the air should allow. Your left shoe unties itself, laces writhing, avoiding a knot that resembles a hanged man. Sunlight flickers on off, a cosmic light switch testing its reflexes. A thrush lands on the dial pecs at the spider misses for 13 heartbeats. The bird's shadow freezes mid-flap, wings splayed like a stone-rubbed etching. Parish records from 1632 mention a devil fowl haunting the yard, its droppings allegedly sprouted into sundials. You circle the monument, stepping over graves marked with hourglass symbols. A cracked plaque reads Tempus edax rerum, time devours all things. Edx's worn down E could pass for an F, making it Timpus FedEx, which sounds like a rejected Roman cereal brand. The spider abandons your shoulder, repelling toward a hollow in the dial's base. Inside, a rusted pocket watch, its hands spinning counterclockwise, faster, blurring into a silver haze. Watchmaking manuals worn against unidirectional temporal stress. A fancy way to say your grandparents' heirlooms hate Mondays. Shadows thicken not from clouds, but from the dial itself. The gnomон's curve now mirrors the baker's bread-scoring knife, the smith's unfinished horseshoe, your own wind-chapped lips. You trace the IX numeral, fingertips coming away smeared with algae green and something coppery, light fractures spearing the church roof, then the lich gate, then inside your left pupil. Blinking doesn't help, just paints afterimages of sundials on your retina. An 18th century vicar wrote hymns comparing God's grace to a perfectly angled gnomon. His congregation revolted, demanded more relatable metaphors. The pocket watch chimes a sound like ice cracking over dark water. Its glass face sweats beads of mercury, rolling upward in defiance of gravity. You catch one on your tongue, regret instantly. The taste, burnt hair and birthday candles, with a hint of pirated Wi-Fi. Your shadow peels off the grass, stretching into a corridor of tilted light. It beckons, wristwatchless arm pointing toward the willow-choked creek. Sundial scholars whisper about shadow migration, but admit they're just trying to justify their thesis budgets. The cherubs sneeze dust, a cloud spelling HORAM Cuveritis in cursive particulates. You vaguely recall Latin. You who seek the hour. The sentence ends with a moldy asterisk. Gravel crunches behind you, rhythmic, patient. You don't turn. Rule number 1 of horror stories and parish etiquette. Dampness soaks through your socks. Did the marsh follow you? Or did time unravel your path? The gnomon's shadow splinters, each fragment crawling toward different graves. One tendril reaches your ankle, lingers, dissolves into mist. 1765, 1802, 2020. The years buzz like swatted flies. You pluck a dandelion clock. Its seeds burst prematurely, each parachute carrying a speck of obsidian, blowing on time. How very human. The spider rebuilds its web, now threaded through your buttonhole. Church bells again, 12 tolls, or one toll stretched like taffy. The pocket watch explodes, shards embedding in the cherub's eyes. They weep stone tears, collecting in a puddle that reflects last Tuesday. You kneel, drink, taste yesterday's breakfast, and the baker's unborn sourdough. When you stand, the sundial's intact, moss-free, gnomon gleaming. Your shadow behaves, mostly. The nettle patch where you lobbed your phone now blooms with digitalis flowers, their petals shaped like loading icons. You pocket a blossom. It hums the window's shut-down melody. Dew forms on the dial, droplets sliding upward to crown the gnomon. A ladybug circumnavigates XII twice forward, once in reverse. Time rights itself, or fakes it well. The parish pretends nothing happened. And you, well, you check your wrist, then remember. Your fingers brush cold limestone, the hillside exhaling dampness that clings to your lungs. That brittle flute melody coils tighter, each note a splintered icicle. Owl pellets crunch underfoot, tiny bone mosaics of mice who forgot to flee. The cave mouth yawns, a crooked grin choked with ivy. Medieval pied piper tailies got one thing right. Music makes rodents and humans equally stupid. Your phone's dead, but that digitalis flower in your pocket hums counter melodies. You swat it, like silencing an alarm set by a prankster ghost. Inside, walls glisten with snail trails, bioluminescent scribbles. Historians still argue whether ancient bone flutes were ritual tools or Stone Age kazoos. Your shoulder scrapes a stalactite. It rings middle C, because of course it does. 3 steps deeper, the air tastes of wet wool and indecision. A broken flute lies near a calcified boot print, its reed chewed by time's teeth. You crouch, peer at carvings, stick figures, piping to a spiral vortex. Summoning storms claims a plaque from a 1920s occultist group. Their HQ, now a PetSmart. A bat swoops, wings fluttering Morse code for leave now. You stay. Rebel instincts trump common sense and Wi-Fi withdrawal. The melody sharpens, needles pricking your eardrums. Your shadow detaches, slinks toward a crevice oozing groundwater. Underground rivers here supposedly carry the voices of drowned miners. But you're not paid enough to fact check. Your pinky stabs something soft, an owl pellet still warm. Unwrap it, shiny beetle wings, a mouse skull, a molar that looks suspiciously human. Quinoa salad from lunch does a backflip. Light bleeds from your pocket, the digitalis flower pulsing like a rave glow stick. Its petals project shadows, stick figures dancing around your ankles. One trips over a root, the others laugh. You're definitely hallucinating, or the parish is trolling you. The flute melody stutters, resets, begins Beethoven's Ode to Joy. Your left foot taps involuntarily. An 1803 newspaper clipping mentioned a shepherd who piped this tune. His sheep marched into a quarry singing harmoniously. The article's last line. Printers regret the ink spill, obscuring this story's conclusion. Stone grinds above the ceiling, dips an inch, sprinkling grit in your hair. Survival guides say never enter unstable caves, but they also said kale chips were a good idea. You pocket the broken flute, its splinters whisper against denim. The shadow returns, dragging a rotted bootlace. It points deeper into the tunnel, where the air smells of struck matches and self-loathing. Your flower dims, dies, revives as a firefly zooms past. Something crunches under your heel, a deer jawbone teeth filed into piping notation. 18th century French music theorists wrote about osteomusical cryptography. Then the church made them stop. You hum a scale jawbone teeth chatter approval. The ceiling's lower now, crawling on elbows. You spot carvings, half pictograms, half Bluetooth symbols. A drip lands on your neck, suspiciously warm. The melody's inside your skull, stitching itself into yesterday's pop song remix. Your pinky ring glints, revealing claw marks on the wall. 3 parallel gouges. 4, 9, someone counted breaths here. A 1990s raver swore they found glow paint residue, the best kind of disturbing. His MySpace blog claimed. Cold stone presses your back, the passage forks. Left tunnel reeks of burnt honey. Right smells like grandma's cedar chest. Flip the digitalis pedal. It spins like a helicopter, crashes right. Mist coils around your calves, thickening into a pseudo-carpet. You wade through kneel by a crystal pool. Reflected not your face, but a willow tree by a creek you've never visited. Its branches droop heavy with pocket watches instead of leaves. The flute crescendos, sound waves ripple the water. A fish leaps, its scales etched with tiny clefts. Victorian mediums insisted music could transcribe the dead's final thoughts, their sheet music sold at Barnum Circus. Your lungs rebel, cave air's heavier now, black spots dance like eighth notes. Retreating, you snag your sleeve on a stalagmite. Fabric tears, your arm comes back tattooed with lichen hieroglyphs. Sunlight blinds you at the exit, should have brought sunglasses or a vampire chaperone. The melody lingers, harmonizing with wind through dying oak leaves. You check your flower. It's now a cicada shell, buzzing the window's error chime. Church bells drown the flute's last whimper. Your shadow reattaches, sulking. They'll meet again, probably during some inopportune bathroom break. For now, blisters scream, pockets bulge with cave garbage, and your temple throbs a perfect 4/4 rhythm. Blistered feet drag you downhill. The dairyman's cellar yawns like a toothless mouth. Rotted milk smell hits first. Sour cream arm wrestling, wet hay. Your nose wrinkles like a rejected origami swan. A clanking rhythm pulses below. Butter churns don't usually sound so alive. Tallow smoke stings your eyes as you descend. The dairyman's there, flour-dusted apron, knuckles cracked from kneading time itself. Protection, he grunts, slapping a cheese wedge onto oak planks. It glows faintly, sage and time veins pulsing like smuggled neon. 18th century Stilton makers hid ale in their wheels to dodge taxes. But this reeks of older tricks. You poke the cheese, it yields like conspiracy theory putty. The dairyman grins, missing molars, framing a black hole punchline. Cream swirls in copper vats, except that one's churning backwards. Tiny bubbles rise down. A 1734 Edinburgh Gazette article described devil's butter that spoiled only under moonlight. But you're not here to fact-check dairy poltergeists. He saws off a slice. Mold blooms resemble crop circles. Eat. Your teeth sink into funk and defiance. Florence Nightingale once prescribed aged cheddar for battlefield morale. This tastes more like a war crime. Something moves in the vat's reflection, not your face, a procession of hooded figures carrying. Is that a cheesecloth shroud? Historians still argue whether medieval monks used curds to bind spellbooks. Their manuscripts certainly smelled better than this. The dairyman cackles, offers a clay cup of something clotted. It's yogurt. Milk solids writhe. You swear one spells help in curlicue script. Your gut gurgles an SOS response. Check the walls. Cheesecloth drapes flutter without wind. Each bundle bulges. Something inside breathes. Victorian dairy maids whispered about living rinds that outlasted their makers. But they also thought gin cured tuberculosis. Your tongue's numb now. The herbs buzz like downed power lines. A 1920s French chef claimed mold could transmit memories. His brie-induced vision of Marie Antoinette's execution got him institutionalized. The cheese knife gleams its handle inlaid with sheep knuckle bones. The dairyman stuffs your pack with waxy bundles for the road. His fingers leave indigo smudges, woad dye or freezer burn. You thank him, realize he hasn't blinked once. Sunlight feels blasphemous upstairs. Your breath fogs, but the vapor hangs midair, forming a tiny cheese wheel. It spins, dissolves, leaves the aftertaste of unanswered questions. Bees swarm a nearby crock, their honeycomb etched with the same herb patterns. Church bells toll, it's either 3 p.m. or the 9th plague. You bite another hunk, bitterness coats your molars. The dairyman's laugh follows you, a sound like cream spoiling in real time. One wheel in your pack vibrates, soft Morse code pulses. Probably nothing, definitely something. You walk faster, pastor's house reeks of baked forgiveness, but your breath still smells like culinary treason. The village green looms its maypole, wrapped in sourdough starter instead of ribbons. You swear the cheese winks, or maybe that's just the mold talking. Either way, your next bathroom break's gonna be legendary. Hay prickles through your shirt as you collapse into the loft, a nest of golden itch. Noon light slants through warped boards, painting stripes on eyelids heavier than church lead. The cheese hums in your pack, 7 bell tolls shudder the air. Wait, 7. Time's drunk again. You chew a sage leaf stolen from the dairyman's stash. It tastes like a librarian's breath. Sweat glues your cheek to a hay bale, scratchy dreams already clawing at your skull. The 12th century Cistercians built vaulted naves to amplify bells. But this loft's groaning timbers make a cheap substitute. Sleep flips the world like a pancake. Now you're weightless, hovering above the parish as it detaches from the earth. Cobblestones unstitch themselves. Sheep float belly up like woolly clouds. The smithy's anvil tumbles into a brook with a cartoon plop. The spire's weather vane spins wildly, a rusted cockerel chasing its own tail. You drift past the belfry, count 11 bells where there should be 3. Medieval founders sometimes cast metal with human bone ash, allegedly, to sweeten the tone. This one's clapper smells suspiciously like paprika. A shadow coils around the bell tower. Too many joints, too many teeth. It whispers in Old English, something about tax exemptions for monasteries. Historians still argue whether Norman lords really taxed churches per bell, but the shadow's ledger looks convincing. You grab a floating hymn book, it melts into eels. The marsh reeds below sway in reverse, their roots combing the sky for rainwater. 16th century fen dwellers believed flooded villages could be heard singing through reed pipes. Though that might have been the ergot talking, the cheese in your pack vibrates C-sharp, maybe D-flat. A tinny voice crackles through its rind. Return the way. Your fingers sink into the wedge touch, something cold and metallic. 7 iron nails nest in the mold, arranged like a drunken constellation. The dairyman's laughter booms from the churchwarden's chimney, or maybe your left ear. The nails hum, now reciting Macbeth's soliloquy in monotone. Queen Elizabeth, I once banned cheese imports during Lent. Perhaps she knew about these little stowaways. A bell tolls 8 times now, each strike pealing the parish farther skyward. Thatch roofs become kites. Tombstones flip like coins. The widow's bonnet floats past, still scenting of cedar smoke. You try shouting, your voice unspools into ribbon, candy-striped, and useless. Gravity returns with a sucker punch to the gut. You wake, cheek imprinted with hay hieroglyphs, to actual bells, ringing 7 no, 9 no, 12 times. The loft sways like a drunkard. A 1911 tabloid reported a Sussex bell tower, ringing non-stop for 3 days. Workers found only a nest of hibernating bats. The cheese has migrated to your armpit, warm and sulky. Your pocket watch shows 3:17 p.m., but the light's all wrong, golden syrupy, suspended. A beetle trundles up your sleeve, its shell engraved with the dairyman's face. You shove the nightmare fuel aside, focus on reality. Reality being a hayloft that now smells faintly of burnt caramel. The village below looks intact. If you ignore the baker's chimney smoking in spiral patterns, a shadow flits across the sun-bat bird, or that jointed thing from your dream. Doesn't matter. You've got 12 mystery nails, a bilingual cheese, and a newfound hatred of campanology. The bells finally quit. Silence pools in your ears, thick enough to drown in. Somewhere a lamb bleats. Somewhere the dairyman's still laughing. Somewhere your sanity files divorce papers. You gnaw another cheese corner, it bleeds honey. The aftertaste. Regret, with notes of Victorian penny candy. 14th century monks wrote about bell sickness, dizziness from lingering chimes. Your head spins, or maybe the hayloft does, or the universe. Dusk approaches. Has it been minutes or hours? Time's playing hopscotch. You check your pack, half the cheese is gone. So are 3 nails. So is your ability to care. The first star winks awake. Or is that a village window? The parish exhales, settles deeper into the valley's palm. Your eyelids droop stupidly, irresistibly. This time, the dream smells like wet wool and candle wax. Wild roses snag your sleeve as you stumble forward, thorns sharper than nursery rhymes promised. The air clings, wet wool and hot tallow. Sunday school punishments gone feral. Mounds rise like infant hillocks, too slight for adult bones, too many to count. A lace dangles from one grave once white, now the color of forgotten teeth. You crouch, brush dirt from a miniature shoe, scuffed toe, mouse-nibbled sole, a broken button dangling by threads. 19th century parishes, buried stillborns at crossroads to disorient lost souls. These graves didn't get the memo. Your fingernail catches on the shoe's insole, something etched beneath the leather. Memento mori in letters smaller than ant legs. Tudor parents, sometimes sewn cradles with horsehair thread to trick death into thinking the babe already belonged to the other folk. This feels less hopeful. Damp seeps through your knees. The shoe crumples in your palm, suddenly ashy, insubstantial. A giggle ripples through the rose thorns, high-pitched, then guttural, then gone. You stand too fast, your vision swimming with black dots. Gravediggers in the 1820s used mutton fat to grease their shovels. You'd kill for that greasy stench now. One mound stirs, soil trickling downward, as if something's scratching upward. Your boot sole grinds a clay pipe fragment, stem snapped, bowl stamped with a fleur-de-lis. Historians still argue whether these graves held plague orphans or offerings to something older than crosses. The pipe shard warms in your hand, too hot to drop. Rose petals rain down, each sizzling where they land. Your pockets sag with sudden weight, check to find 3 horse teeth, a thimble, a dried newt. Gifts, whispers the wind, or maybe the thing 6 inches below your left heel. Moonlight stretches the shadows of thorns into a cradle-shaped lattice. You step back, feel the writhing of roots beneath your soles. Someone etched a name into the newt's belly Emmeline, then scratched it out with a nail. Grave robbers avoided these plots, feared dolls filled with quicklime that screamed when unearthed. The largest mound splits, a crack exhaling sour milk and funeral lilies. Inside, a teacup, intact despite centuries. Its pattern matches the widow's china. 3 drops of liquid bead on the rim, mercury. Holy water. You dab a fingertip. It tastes of elderberries and regret. Footsteps crunch behind you, swift, light, stopping precisely where your shadow ends. Turning reveals only your own footprints, deeper than they should be, as if you've been pacing here for hours. The 1887 Lancet reported a nurse who unearthed 32 infant shoes under York Minster, all left-footed, all containing nightshade berries. Dawn threatens, streaks of weak yellow through mist. The mounds flatten suddenly, roses retreating into thorny fists. Only the teacup remains, now full of murky liquid. You pour it out, watch the dirt hiss and bubble. Steam forms a word enough. By first light, just a patch of nettles, a lone button, and the sense you've passed through a keyhole. Your pockets are empty again, except for the pipe shard, now cool and inert. The shoe, gone, but your left heel itches fiercely. You scratch it, peel back sock wool, find 3 rose thorn scratches forming a rune. Letter 160F, Athala heritage, or maybe just bad luck. Your canteen water boils when poured over the mark briefly, then goes still. Victorians called this gravage, prescribed leeches, and pickled onions. You have neither. The parish bells ring 6 times. 9. You've lost count, lost care, lost the line between nettle rash and enlightenment. Chewing the last sage leaf, you walk east. The dairyman's laughter follows, or maybe it's the roses. Either way, you make a note to avoid shoemakers. A rotten plank groans underfoot, the dock's bones splintering into the marsh. The boat knocks, insistent, like a wet fist on a coffin lid. No oars, no pole, just 2 inches of black water sloshing at the bottom, stinking of peat and iron. Your palm finds a coin in your pocket, unseen until now. 17th century ferrymen demanded payment in bog silver. Coins too corroded to spend anywhere but here. The far shore glimmers maybe 50 yards. 80. Distance puckers like crepe paper here. You toss the coin. It plinks, sinks, floats back up, glowing faintly. Historians still argue whether Karen's legend inspired these ferrymen, or if grim punters just plagiarized a good gimmick. You step in. The boat doesn't rock, doesn't even creak. It feels less like wood than cooled candle wax, slick, vaguely alive. Mist licks your ankles, thickening into ropes that tether you to the bench. Some claim ferrymen's ghosts cling to their roots for centuries, properly haunting the commute. You'd kill for a laminated timetable right about now. Paddles stir, though nothing touches the water. Ripples spread perfect as cathedral window tracery. A heron glides overhead, cry warped into a creaking hinge. 1840s bog man discovery comes to mind. They found a Toland resident preserved with a leather noose. And 3 oatcakes for the trip. You've got half a moldy biscuit. The shore approaches, then retreats, approaches. A minnow leaps, lands in the boat, writhes into a scrap of lace. Your left heel itches where the rose thorn rune hides. 13 years ago, archaeologists dug up a ferryman's skeleton near York, skull full of river pebbles, pockets crammed with hazelnuts. Some call it ritual. Others think he just loved snacks. Dark shapes move beneath the surface, too big for fish, too still for logs. Something grazes the hull nails. Antlers. You scoop a palmful of water. It's warm, tastes of blood and pennyroyal. Tudor docks warned against fairy brews, tea made from bog growths that showed travelers their death month. The boat grinds ashore. Or does the shore grind to the boat? The coins in your pocket multiply. 37, 42, 60, each stamped with a 3-eyed hare. This side of the marsh hums, a beehive underfloor. Your boot sinks into mud that sucks, whispers, proposes marriage. A cottage squats ahead, smoke smearing from its chimney, dead starlings nailed above the door. Your throat tightens, but the ferryman's rulebook floats into mind. Never refuse hospitality. Never accept supper. Never compliment the curtains. Victorian half-wisdom. Might as well knock. No one answers. Yet the door swings, reveals a hearth roaring with blue flame. A ladle stirs itself in a cauldron. Something with carrots, parsnips, claws. A doll perches on the settle button eyes, like in hair, your grandmother's chin. You've read about fairy houses, waystations maintained by unknown hands, stocked with meals that age travelers backwards. The doll's head swivels, follows you, leaks sawdust when it smiles. A fly lands on their forehead, gets sucked into a crack. You pocket a pewter spoon, engraved M for Margaret, or maybe Mephistopheles. Who's to say? Outside, muffled clopping, like hooves wrapped in felt. The far shore's gone, replaced by your original dock, rotting as ever. The boat drifts empty, awaiting its next passenger. Your biscuits now a river stone, warm, vibrating at sea sharp. Ferrymen once sang to calm their fares. Their songbooks survive. But the notes devour musicians, breath if played. 3 scratches sear your palm, matching the heel rune. The smoke from the cottage now spells almost. Your pockets empty again, except for a hazelnut shell, carved with a single word, yours. Bells resume across the marsh, 3 tones lower than before, heavy enough to dent the fog. You turn east, toward the baker's dawnlit smoke, as the ferryman's laugh ripples through the reeds. Or maybe it's trapped gas from last night's cheese. Either way, pack mince next time. The baker's chimney smoke coils upward, its usual comfort curdling into tendrils of spoiled milk. You duck into the church porch, rain-slick oak against your shoulder. Just as the first candle dies, 6 flames still dance in red glass vigil lights, arranged precisely where the 7 Sorrows altarpiece stood before Great Harry's goons smashed it. Historians still argue whether Tudor vandals enjoyed their work or just followed orders between pints. A draught slithers under the south door, carrying whispers of burnt time. The remaining candles gutter, wax pooling into concave mirrors. Your breath catches. Shapes swim in the molten tallow, gaunt cheeks, hollow eyes, mouths stretched around silent pleas. Medieval wax chandlers often mixed grave dirt into altar candles, a fact your confirmation class glossed over. 1 blob elongates, reaching, dissolving, as its finger meets cool stone. The door creaks open, no hand visible. Just a flood of mist, unspooling across flagstones. 2 more flames expire, their final smoke curling into serpents that twine up a pillar. You step toward the font, holy water's surface frozen despite the humid air. A bubble rises, pops, releases the scent of a dressmaker's shop pierce by lightning. Last candle standing, its flame stretches, thinning to a blue thread as something wet shuffles in the transept. You recall a Strasbourg manuscript's marginalia. Scholars still can't decide if the candle douser was a demon or just a disgruntled church mouse. The wick snaps. Light winks out, darkness pours into your mouth. Tastes like fermented mulberries. Wax crawls. You feel it, not hear it. A viscous ooze climbing your boot. 17th century handbills blamed similar phenomena on Sabbath lectures. But you're so low tonight, the drip reaches your kneecap, warms, hardens into something resembling a cameo brooch. Your great-aunt Mildred's face smirks up at you, jaw unhinging, to vomit a live earthworm. Moonlight shreds through a shattered rose window, patches of fractured saints glowing on the floor. The puddles have merged, a shallow sea, reflecting faces upside down. Their lips move in unison, almost matching the Latin inscription above the door. You kneel, touch the largest puddle. It adheres like tree sap. A Westminster Abbey guide once joked about tourist gum wads. This isn't that. 3 candles relight spontaneously, green flames now, buzzing like trapped hornets. Their light reveals footprints in the wax, small, bare, circling the font. You follow them, step on a stray rosary bead. It cracks open, releases a moth that dies mid-flight. The prints lead to a brass memorial plaque, polished by centuries of guilt-ridden touching. Your reflection flickers in the engraved dates. 1678, 1692. Only 14 years. But the face staring back has your mother's crow's feet, your childhood freckles, someone else's cauliflower ear. A trickle of wax snakes down your neck, settles behind your clavicle, warm as fresh bread. You're fairly certain this voids the warranty on your flea market crucifix. The north door slams, not wind this time. The wood shudders with purpose. All candles blaze back to life, ordinary yellow, as rain batters the roof like thrown gravel. Wax faces melt into featureless puddles, their final whimpers lost under the downpour. Your knee aches where the pseudo brooch was now just a grease stain with delusions of grandeur. You fish out the ferryman's hazelnut shell. It's yours, glows faintly. Or maybe that's fungal phosphorescence. Across the nave, a single drip of wax falls, splays into a perfect tiny hand, middle finger extended. Some traditions deserve preservation. Outside, the rain stops mid-drop, beads hanging suspended like crystal fruit. The baker's cat trots past, stops, licks a hovering droplet, resumes grooming as though space-time isn't crumbling. Your pockets feel heavier, 3 new hazelnut shells, each etched with not yet. The tolling bells sound almost smug. A candle wick unspools itself, blackened thread slithering under the vestry door. You consider following, then remember the dairyman's cheese still clotting your gut. Priorities. The door handle turns on its own, reveals the usual broom's stole, and an extinguished candle stub wearing a hat woven from spider legs. You retreat, step into moonlight now thick as axle grease, leave the doors gaping. Let the next pilgrim deal with the haunted arts and crafts. The last wax puddle shivers, forms letters, cold supper inside. pass. The baker's chimney smoke beckons, its curl now a shepherd's crook, or a question mark, depending on how hungry you are. Moonlight slicks the cobbles as you turn toward the baker's glow, but something prickles your nape. There, on the spire's tip, a heron perches with the stillness of a gargoyle, praying for overtime pay. Its feathers drink the light, blacker than Tudor chimney soot, neck coiled like a whip poised to crack. You blink, swear it nods, then it's just a silhouette against starless sky. 13 lead panels sheath the spire, each poured by monks convinced molten metal could scare off hell itself. The heron's absence feels heavier than its presence, as though the air now wears lead vestments. A frog plops into the mill pond, ripples spread, freeze mid-undulation, become 1,000 silver serpents caught mid-hiss. Medieval churches once hung iron hooks from their spires. Historians still argue whether they supported scaffoldings or displayed tax collectors' skewered heads. Wings snap above you, duck, but it's just the weather-vane rooster spinning like a drunken ballerina. Your neck cricks upward, the heron's back, perched precisely where the cross should be. Its beak parts no sound, yet your molars throb in unison. Night herons star in Moldovan tomb carvings as psychopomps, though Farmer Griggs insists they're just rats with better PR. Mist curls around the belfry. The bird dissolves into it, becomes an ink blot, becomes nothing. Your left boot sticks to the cobbles, peeling free, releases a slurp louder than a cemetery belch. The spire's shadow stretches, wraps around your ankles, tugs westward where the marsh waits. You pocket a fallen shingle. Its wood grain forms a screaming face that winks as you stow it. A feather drifts down black at the tip, bone white at the quill. Impossible to tell which end is up. It lands in a suspended raindrop, floats there, a ship, in a liquid diamond dry dock. Bread-scented smoke twists from the baker's chimney, but your stomach somersaults at the thought of eating. 17 paces toward the hearthlight, you stop cold. The heron's reflection glides across every frozen droplet. Its eyes aren't eyes, just vantablack pits that siphon moonlight into some unseen reservoir. You glance at the real spire vacant, yet the reflections keep coming, a feathered avalanche in reverse. A Westminster carillonneur once joked that herons tune church bells with their beaks. You're not laughing now. The baker's door creaks. A rectangle of buttery light spills out, severs the heron's neck in every reflection. Warmth beckons, oven's breath versus avian frost, but your feet root like hemlock saplings. Thatch rustles above, a feather embeds itself in your sleeve, squirms like a tapeworm until you flick it off. When you look back, the marshward path wears a carpet of downy plumes, each vibrating like violin strings. Your great uncle's voice rasps in memory. Birds that watch aren't birds at all. The warning arrives 30 years late, slightly moldy at the edges, but appreciated nonetheless. You toss a hazelnut shell toward the spire. It arcs, halts midair, cracks open to disgorge a live housefly. The heron materializes just long enough to snap the insect mid-zigzag, then evaporates like steam off a corpse. Something between your shoulder blades itches, the ghost of a beak's pressure. Or maybe that oatmeal sweater from Primark. Clouds unravel, moonbeams lance through the heron-shaped hole in the mist, burning your retinas with afterimage teeth. You count breaths. 1733. Lose track when the number 74 whispers itself inside your sinuses. The baker's cat saunters past, pounces on a frozen raindrop, licks its paw in triumph over defeated physics. Dawn's first gull cry shreds the horizon. The heron's weight lifts, carried off with the retreating stars. Your knees unlock. You stumble toward the bakery, every window pane reflecting empty spire behind you. The dairyman's protective cheese churns in protest. Or maybe that's the heron's laughter bubbling up through your small intestine. 3 feathers cling to your coat. They crumble to ash as sunlight hits the porch. Inside, the baker slides you a plum tart, says nothing about your twitching eye or the new shadows nesting in your ears. Plum tart clings to your molars, sticky sweet, as you backtrack past the dairyman's shuttered stall. A cellar door gaps between 2 cottages, all splintered wood and rusted hinges. Its darkness breathing yeast and wet limestone. You hesitate, then descend stairs that flex like greenwood beneath your boots. Brine stings your nostrils, damp stone fermenting malt, something vegetal and wrong. Barrels line the walls, staves bulging as if pregnant with secrets. A man materializes by a cask labeled XXVII, apron stained like a murder victim's bandages. Thirsty, his smile reveals teeth filed to points, a 15th century brewer's trick to mimic fangs and deter grain thieves. He thrusts a tankard at you, liquid, within glows faintly green. Monastic brewmasters once spiked ale with bog myrtle as preservative. This reeks of older sorceries. A bubble rises, bursts, whispers, remember the unmarked graves. You decline, he shrugs, drains the mug himself. Suit yourself, the dead aren't picky. His laughter clangs against brickwork, a mechanical hiccup, missing any trace of joy. Between casks, ceramic jugs squat like swollen fetuses. One sports a wax seal stamped with Janus, 2-faced Roman god of thresholds. Historians still argue whether pagan symbols protected medieval brews or invited certain drinkers across veils. The brewer slaps a barrel. Mud-streaked liquid oozes down its side, thick as ectoplasm, harvested the night ground first froze. Best vintage needs 9 winters below. You note shovels leaning nearby, dirt caked under their blades, and a single dried poppy clinging to the handle. 13th century Swedish tomb excavations found ale laced with poppy milk. Was it sacrament or mercy? A jug trembles, you flinch. But it's just the brewer's hound rubbing its mange-riddled flank against the shelves. The creature fixes you with mismatched eyes, one sky blue, one cataract gray. Local lore claims dogs fed grave soil beer gain second sight, though this one mostly seems to see its own fleas. Light glints on something submerged in an open cask. You lean closer. The brewer slams the lid, no peeking till it's sprouted. His thumb brushes a crescent scar, identical to the baker's mark on the barrel's head. 3 ropes hang from the ceiling, knotted into nooses the size of a child's wrist. The hound growls at empty air, hackles rising, then bolts up the stairs. Candle flames stretch horizontal, though no draft stirs your hair. Ceramic lids rattle, their jugs pulse like hearts in a butcher's window. Ah, murmurs the brewer, dinner time. He unstoppers a bottle, smoke coils out, forms a skeletal hand, pointing northwest toward the marsh. You follow the gesture, 2 casks shudder, birth a chorus of wet coughs. When you turn back, the smoke hand grips your wrist, stinging cold. The brewer pries it off, dissolves the digits with a handful of salt. Meant for them, not you. He flicks salt grains into a brazier. They combust into sapphire flames. 18th century midwives. Journals describe spirit salt rituals, but modern academics dismiss them as childbirth hallucinations. The throbbing welt on your arm begs to differ. A barrel groans, its iron bands snap, splinters embed themselves in the ceiling beams. What spills isn't liquid, not quite. It slithers toward the stairs, a translucent eel seeking moonlight. The brewer sighs, stabs it with a copper ladle. The creature writhes, collapses into a puddle of pearlescent scum. 3rd leak this week. He mops the sludge with his apron. Seals ain't what they were. You edge toward the exit, nostrils flaring at the tang of ozone and rot. A cobweb brushes your neck, sticks like flypaper, strips free with a sound like skin tearing. The brewer blocks your path, offers a clay flask for the long walk ahead. His pupils momentarily eclipse his irises, 2 black pennies over a grave. You pocket it, neither consenting nor refusing, and feel its contents slosh, heavier than liquid should be. Medieval soul flasks found under York Minster still baffle archaeologists. Were they blasphemy or bottled bail money for the afterlife? Sunlight pierces the cellar. The brewer hisses, covers his face with coal-blackened hands. You flee up the stairs, his parting chuckle nipping at your heels. The flask vibrates against your thigh, 5 distinct pulses. A knock from something within. Outside, fresh air feels like scrubbing your lungs with wire wool. You unscrew the flask, inhale brine, crushed violets, and the metallic tang of a bitten tongue. 3 drops spill, sear the cobblestones. Etch a rune that fades before you decipher it. The baker's cat materializes, sniffs the mark, arches its back, and spits at nothing. A church bell tolls, the flask's contents still, then ripple counter to the sound waves. You remember the unmarked graves, the heron's appetite, and wonder what fermentations tomorrow's moon will bring. The dairyman's cheese turns to lead in your gut. Perhaps protection needs renegotiating. Gravel crunches. You spin, but it's just wind toying with elderflower husks. From the cellar dark below, something hums a lullaby in reverse. Moonlight stitches silver threads through the mist, each strand humming at a pitch that makes your fillings ache. The flask from the brewer warms in your grip, its contents now glowing like a lightning bug's abdomen. You tilt it, watch liquid cling to the clay interior, defying gravity, before sliding back down with a resentful glorp. Elderflower husks skitter across your boots, their hollow rasp echoing the lullaby still oozing from the cellar. 12 paces ahead, the moon paints a perfect circle on the cobbles, too symmetrical for nature. Stepping into its light feels like plunging into cold broth. Shivers cascade from your scalp to your soles. Something plucks at your collar. You whirl, find only mist reshaping itself into faceless figures. 14th century treatises warn of moon-drawn sprites that mimic loved ones. But your mind conjures no familiar shapes here. The phantom touch comes again. This time at your wrist, your fingers spring open. The flask arcs through the gloom. It lands upright, unbroken, casting sickly green light on a graffito etched into the wall. 3 interlocking spirals. The triquetra symbol, same one branded into that suspiciously long-lived goat near the mill. A drop of the brew leaks out, hisses, where it meets the triquetra's grooves, briefly illuminating Roman numerals beneath. III via XIII. Wind gusts, the mist parts, revealing the church spire spearing the sky. 5 crows perch on its weather vane, all facing different directions. One cocks its head, fixes you, with an eye reflecting twice as much moonlight as physics should allow. You swear under your breath. The words emerge backward. Di imno di news era oi. The flask vibrates, 3 short, 2 long, 1 endless. When you stoop to retrieve it, your shadow stretches ahead, then snaps back like a rubber band. Historians still argue whether medieval shadow magic was optical illusion or the first documented invisible ink. Your knuckles scrape cobbles worn concave by centuries of processions. The stone feels warmer than living flesh. Mist thickens, reduces the world to a 10-pace radius. Shapes dart at the edges, too low for adults, too fluid for animals. A child's giggle erupts behind you, cut short, as if someone clapped a hand over the laugher's mouth. You freeze, inhale decay masked by honeysuckle, count 7 heartbeats before daring to turn. Nothing. The flask's glow intensifies, revealing footprints, materializing in the damp grit. Bare feet, small, overlapping in a spiral pattern. You follow despite every synapse screaming nope, 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 each step squelching, like flesh separating from bone. The trail ends at a dry stone wall, its crevices oozing a substance too iridescent to be lichen. 1 stone protrudes, modern concrete amid ancient rubble. You press it, the wall shudders, disgorges a wooden box sealed with beeswax. Inside, a doll-sized lace collar yellowed, embroidered with rowan berries. 19th century poisoners often hid antidotes in such frippery, though this smells of funeral lilies and burnt hair. A branch cracks, you jam the box in your pocket, spin to face 6 glowing points in the mist. Eyes, lanterns. The brewer's flea-bitten hound slinks forward, emitting a guttural growl that modulates into spoken Gaelic. Chan Isle Isabhilt. Its blue eye twitches. The cataract milky one rolls back before the beast flees yelping into the gloom. Lightning fractures the sky. No thunder follows. The triquetra on the wall now bleeds a viscous black, its stench rivaling the brewer's least savory casks. You retreat, heel catches on a root, and the world flips. Ground rushes up, flask flies from your hand, shatters against a headstone you don't recall passing. Liquid splatters the inscription. Margaret of the Lee, 1683-1690, taken by owls. The stone absorbs the brew, begins to sweat quicksilver. Local legends speak of Alfevers stealing children. Victorian doctors blamed malnutrition. Mothers blamed wings at midnight. Your palms sting from scrapes. The blood on your left hand forms a perfect sigil. It mirrors the triquetra, but inverted. Above, the moon blinks, actually fucking blinks, as clouds shutter its light for 1, 2, 3 heartbeats. When the glow returns, the brewery's cellar door stands ajar across the square, impossible given the 20 minutes you've spent wandering. A shadow detaches from the church wall, elongates, stretches to meet your feet. Resistance drains from your muscles. Thoughts turn syrupy, as if the moon itself pours into your skull. 14 steps to the cellar stairs. You could recite them backward if your tongue weren't suddenly 2 sizes too big. The hound howls, a sound so layered with pain and glass you taste copper. The shadow tugs, or maybe it's the triquetra branded goat, now blocking your path, its amber eyes reflecting 9 pupils each. You've read about Basque herders using goat sclera divination. But this feels less like prophecy, more like an audit. Clouds devour the moon. Darkness swells, presses against your eardrums until the first bell tolls. It's not from the church, but beneath you, deep in the earth. The vibrations unstick your feet. You stagger, clutch the blood sigil hand to your chest, and run. Cottages blur their hearth glow extinguished as you pass. The baker's cat hisses from a thatch roof, a dead shrew dangling from its jaws. You hit the hayloft ladder, climb, collapse into prickling dryness that smells of safety and sleep. Through a knothole, you watch the mist. Shapes coalesce, a procession of shadows holding smaller shadows by the hand. Their whispers weave through the bells, dying vibrations. The veil frays fastest for those who taste twice. The flasks' remnants glint among grave markers, each shard winking like a conspirator. You press your bleeding palm to the hayloft floor, leave a smudged triquetra, and wonder who'll find it come dawn. Moonlight pierces the knothole, projects your mangled shadow on the wall. It waves at you with too many fingers. Sleep comes like a chloroform rag, crude and efficient. In its embrace, the bells toll 33 times, or maybe once. Your dreams taste of the brewer's smoke, Margaret's quicksilver sweat, and the precise angle at which owls tilt their heads before striking. The last bell's echo nests in your molars, its weight a promise or a threat. Embers pulse through cottage windows, ruby glows in a village that should be asleep. You count 7 chimneys, 8, 9, each breathing steady hearthlight into the mist. No smoke taints the air, just sheer radiance bleeding through cracks in shutters. Your scraped palm hovers above a windowsill. Heat licks your wounds, sweet as a mother's kiss, wrong as a spider in your porridge. The baker's cottage bleeds orange through its keyhole. Peering inside, no fire, just a single log resting in ash, its core blazing without fuel. Tudor households kept ever burners as status symbols, rich folks showing they could waste wood like breath. This parish outshines Hampton Court and smells distinctly of roasted chestnuts. A muffled clink makes you pivot. The widow's copper kettle floats midair, pouring tea into a cup that isn't there. Steam rises, curls into the shape of linked rings before dissolving. You blink, the kettle sits cold on its hook, but your tongue tastes bergamot and regret. 3 cottages down, the weaver's hearth flames flare cobalt. Shadows stitch themselves into tapestry patterns on the walls. Stag hunts, coronations. A man drowning in wheat. Fact, 14th century dyers used funnel web venom to fix colors. The azure licks at a spindle threads, unspooling into the fire, dancing like snakes before vanishing. Your boot scuffs a hearthstone, it shifts, reveals a compartment charred black, inside a clay figurine childlike, fused with melted coins. 19th century folk hid fire imps in walls to ward off chimney fires. This one's face has eroded, except the smile, jagged as a saw blade. The blacksmith's anvil glows cherry red, yet the coals beneath stay ash gray. A half-formed horseshoe floats above it, hammer strikes flashing like camera bulbs. No smith swings the tools, just the relentless clang-clang-clang of spectral industry. You hum a sea shanty to drown the noise, realize the rhythm matches perfectly, and immediately shut up. Near the churchyard, a cottage's embers stutter. Its door creaks. A rotted cradle rocks by the hearth cobwebs strung between spindles, thrumming like lute strings. Historians still argue whether plague era quarantine fires sterilized homes or just roasted rats. The air here smells of both rosemary and ruptured organs. You pocket a glowing cinder. It sears wool, then cools to a pebble. Not your smartest move. The dairyman's cow lows in protest or approval, its eyes reflecting every cottage's fire tenfold. Medibi of Connaught allegedly stole a king's eternal flame in a similar bovine heist, but that's probably bull. A flicker draws you to the miller's window. His hearth hosts a miniature sun. It spins, flares, shrinks, trapped in a cast-iron prison. Your retina burns with afterimages of solar prominences. Corpusants, sailors called them, St. Elmo's fire made domestic. The miller's cat bats at it, paw unharmed, fur smoking. Dawn's first smear of gray appears the embers dim, but don't die. Light reshapes itself, now amber, now verdant, now the bruised purple of old arteries. You stagger against a rain barrel, your shadow splashes across 3 cottages, briefly snuffing their fires. They reignite in unison directed at your face, before softening back to invitation. The brewery's hearth vomits a geyser of sparks, each forming runes too brief to decipher. One lands on your sleeve, spells halt before dying. Flame writing was a Victorian parlor trick involving saltpeter and gullible ants. This version uses spite and your left eyebrow, now slightly less bushy. At the lich gate, you glance back. 63 points of light, now more windows uncovered. The village hums a beehive with fire for honey. Your legs fold, plop you into dew-drenched grass as the widow's spectral tea finally kicks in. Sleep comes without permission, dragging you under to the pulse of undying hearths. Each throb whispering stay, stay, stay. Midnight bleeds through the parish. That first bell strike drills into your teeth. The vibration lingers, crawls up your jaw, nests behind your eyes like a trapped hornet. Your feet move without consent, drawn toward the spire, where 12 tolls should have ended hours ago. Cobblestones feel like sponge cake beneath your boots, soft, hungry, swallowing your footprints as you pass. The belfry door hangs open, its wrought iron handle shaped like a serpent swallowing its tail. You climb, each step warping under your weight, risers bending like violin bows. Bell metal's tricky tin and copper alloyed at precise ratios for the perfect cry. 8th century monks used goat blood as flux, or so metallurgy nerds claim. The smell here suggests they weren't wrong. You hit the bell chamber as the final tremor fades. No bell ringer, just the great bronze bowl still shivering, its sound bow glazed with frost. Your breath fogs, but the metal sweats in the moonlight. Historians still argue whether Rome's lost bell of justice could shatter corrupt bones with its peal. This one's humming a lullaby in A minor, a key known to dissolve resolve. 3 spiderwebs span the yoke, each strand vibrating like a violinist's A string. You press a finger to the nearest. The note migrates into your wrist bones. Whispers open in a dialect your muscles remember. 13 tiny notches mar the bell's lip, tool marks or teeth. Your nail catches on a groove. It pulses, spills moonlight across the floor like cream. The rope hangs limp, yet the clapper sways a pendulum without cause. You count seconds between oscillations. 7, 7, 7. An unnatural rhythm that pricks your neck hairs. Medieval townsfolk believed counting bell strokes invited demons to recount your sins. The math checks out. Your knees just calculated compound interest on every lie you've told. Wind sneaks through arrow slits, carries the scent of wet parchment. The sound shifts, now a cathedral organ, now a dentist's drill, now your mother humming through a wall. Your molars ache in unison. That quirky tidbit about Tibetan singing bowls curing toothaches. Pure fiction, but your jaws begging to volunteer. You lean too close, the bell's edge kisses your temple. Flesh hums, skull resonating like a wineglass, rubbed by skilled fingers. Vision fractures, each shard showing a different hour, dawn light slicing the same mist. Noon crowds that never came, twilight swallows dive-bombing ghosts. Your left pupil now holds a perfect reflection of the bell right one's, just a scaredy cat in a fetal position. Footsteps circle below, not the click-clack of shoes, but the wet slap of bare feet on stone. The widow's tea churns in your gut, bergamot becomes iron, becomes a mouthful of lighthouse fog. 7 Parish records mention a bell ringer who vanished mid-toll in 1632. His replacement found deaf, screaming, with bell metal shavings in his ears. A draft lifts your hair, the clapper strikes, but the silence deepens. Blood pools under your tongue, metallic and thick, as if the sounds harvesting your hemoglobin. Tudor law fined towns for unseemly long peals. Parish coffers here must have overflowed. You try whistling. The note steals your breath, returns it scented with grave dirt and burnt honey. Moonlight slants, illuminates inscriptions around the soundbow. Latin, then Saxon, then symbols resembling Hittite torque designs. Your pinky traces a line. It sears, leaves a white ridge across your fingerprint. Fact, defect-free bells can ring for 7 minutes after being struck. This one's been singing since before you entered the churchyard. The ground tilts, or maybe the bell's swaying. You clutch the rope, it sticks to your palm like flypaper, pulls you into a clumsy jig. No, this isn't dancing. This is your body mimicking the clapper's arc. Hips bruise against the parapet, ribs kiss cold stone. Your skull becomes the strike point. Lightning splits the sky, no. It's the bell's afterimage, fracture lines glowing phosphorus white. Retinas burn, but the darkness feels thicker where the light touched. 19th century quack doctors prescribed bell thunder for melancholia. Patients reported happiness and permanent tinnitus. Your eardrums flutter, trying to escape through your nostrils. Dawn's first bird call pierces the veil, a doomed sound. The note unravels, fraying into subharmonics that vibrate your spleen. You collapse, cheek pressed to oak planks, watching the bell hover inches above your head. Its shadow doesn't match its shape. Too many edges, too many jaws. The village exhales, cottage hearths dim. The bell's hum retreats to your marrow. Last night's cinder still burns in your pocket, cool now, smooth as a river stone. You spit out a molar. It rolls, clicks against the belfry stairs, echoes like a tiny silver bell. The hayloft cradles you like a mother worn slick, with too many children, scratchy straw, pricking through linen beeswaxed, rafters groaning overhead. Your lost molar's echo thrums beneath the parish. Or maybe that's just the cider mash heartbeat, still sloshing in your skull. Fog pools in the corners, thick as sheep's wool, sweet as stolen communion wine. You count breaths instead of bells, 4, 7, 13. Numbers unraveling like yarn from a dropped spindle. Mice skitter through rafters, their claws scratching time signatures into the oak. Haylofts once sheltered whole families during harvest moons. Your scratchy bed, a centuries-old tradition. A spider lowers itself onto your forehead, pauses, rewrites your third eye's prescription. Medieval peasants swore rye straw guarded against nightmares, though tonight's prickly mattress feels like it's summoning them. The last bell's afterimage glows beneath your eyelids, a struck match in a cathedral. Your ribs ache where the clapper kissed them, blues and purples blooming like grave moss. Historians still argue whether these rafters hid rebel priests or just particularly enterprising rats. Something warm trickles from your ear, honey. Blood, you're too sleepy to care. Moonlight stitches silver threads through the thatch needles, pulling night's tapestry tight. Your fingers dig into straw, touch something cold and curved, a teacup, a skull. It crumbles before identification. 18th century lovers met in lofts like this, writing vows on barley grains they'd later swallow. You cough, taste oat dust, and regret. The widow's cinder, still in your pocket, presses against your thigh like a thumbprint. Fog seeps under the hayloft door, tendrils sniffing your boots, licking blisters from the day's walk. They say English mist carries memories of the Blitz bombings, but this fog hums older tunes, crusaders, armor clanking, plague carts rattling. Your heartbeat sinks with the parish's secret pulse that subterranean thrum monks once mistook for hell's furnaces. The Smithfield deeds of 1382 mention a well that sang at night, its location lost with the last literate blacksmith. Your tongue sticks to the roof of your mouth, parched despite the damp air. A shadow detaches from the rafters, owl or bat, or something without a name. It fans your face with wings that smell of wet charcoal, deposits a single downy feather on your collarbone. Tudor law required loft inspections for vagrants, but tonight the law's asleep with its mouth open. You dissolve into the hay, limbs sinking, straws knitting through hair, the loft floor breathing like a living thing. That quirky tale about Sussex haystacks curing consumption. Total nonsense. Yet your lungs expand easier now, as if the dust scrubs them clean. The village sighs beneath you, a symphony of thatch settling, apples rotting in forgotten attics, eels sliding through blackstream mud. Your left hand goes numb. Then your right, the paralysis crawling you palm like ivy. 16th century sleep paralysis, demons favored goose feather pillows. You make do with mildewed straw. Dawn's first light leaks through cracks, not gold, but pearly gray milk left to sour. The bell's hum dwindles to a housefly's buzz, retreating into your marrow's hollows. Last night's terror softens, edges blurred like ink in rain you dream of floating. Fog cradles the parish cradles the hayloft. the hayloft cradles you, and the great bronze bell far below cradles the fog. The loft holds you, not with straw's itch, but the weightless press of settled dust. Fog muffles the rafters' creaks, transforms mice scritch into distant harpsichord notes. That thing beneath your palm, just a clay shard, smoothed by generations of restless fingers. Breathe in slow, air tastes of rain-soaked wool and dandelion clocks. Your pulse unwinds, threading through the bells, fading hum down to where root networks cradle forgotten wells. No nightmares here, only the parish sighing as it turns in its sleep. Cool mist curls around your ankles, lifts you gently, a leaf caught in a prayer. Moonlight thin as communion wafer, your body blurs at the edges, stitches itself into the thatch. Historians quarrel, rebels or rats, or lovers' bones. But tonight, the loft whispers simpler truths. Hay softens to cloud stuff. Rafters dissolve into star charts. Your breath, a slow pendulum. Dawn waits beyond the fog, patient as a hedgerow spider. Let it wait. The bell's echo cradles your spine now, a lullaby forged when these beams were saplings. Your fingers unclench, release nothing, grasp nothing, become nothing. Fog cradles the parish cradles the hayloft cradles you. And somewhere deep in the earth, the old well sings,